Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Because you're sitting at the table with me, right, Dr. Lee? All right. Can everybody else hear me all right? All right. There was a no. Okay. Well, perhaps in just a second it's going to quiet down, or actually I'm going to remove this just for introduction's sake. I'll put it back on. Thank you, sir. Welcome to tonight's CRTPA meeting. My name is Kristen Dozier, and I have the pleasure of serving as your chair from Leon County Commission tonight. Before we get started, I would like to welcome our newest member of the board, Commissioner Quincy Messersmith from Wakulla County. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Welcome.
Very glad to have you here.
Welcome.
And for everyone else, our long-serving member, Commissioner Randy Merritt, is not here anymore, so I can't poke fun at him anymore. Maybe a little bit.
We still could, it just wouldn't be as much fun.
There's something here, right? But we really want to appreciate his long service and dedication to our region and our four-county collaborative effort that we have at CRTPA. So for Randy, and we're very glad that you're joining us today. All right, we're going to call roll. Yes? I'll hand it over to Yolanda.
Call to order.
Commissioner Barfield.
Here.
Commissioner Allen.
Present.
Commissioner Messersmith.
Here.
Commissioner Villavisier.
Here.
Commissioner Dozier.
Here.
Commissioner Maddox. Commissioner Minor.
Here.
Commissioner Matlow.
Here.
Commissioner Richardson.
Here.
Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Here.
Madam Chair?
Thank you, ma'am.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
I
sir.
didn't know if you wanted to address the resignation of school board member Roseanne Wood. We got an email from her saying that she was resigning.
Thank you, Commissioner Richardson. I believe she was going to take up that issue
Oh, okay.
at the school board meeting. The topic is school board member Roseanne Wood has announced her resignation from this board, but she will have to take that to the school board for them to appoint a replacement. So we'll wait to hear what the school board does. Thank you, sir. Mr. Slay, any agenda modifications?
No, ma'am.
All right. Do we need to pull the contract from consent?
No,
will it
I was
be
just
a
going to
comment?
make a comment on that once we got to that item, but we still have item number 3, the
Yes.
comment on public and unagended item.
Okay. Do we have public comment on anything not on the agenda tonight?
We did not receive any requests for that.
I assume not. All right. To the consent agenda, and you did want to mention something about item C, the
Yes,
general
ma'am.
planning consultant
Item
contract?
4C, we'd gotten a couple of questions from 2 of the consultants that we are going to be selecting with questions on the language. So what we're asking is that the language or the contracts be approved pending final review by Mr. Williams.
All right. If that is acceptable to everyone, and there's nothing pulled from consent, could we have a motion?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion from Commissioner Richardson and a second from Commissioner Villavisier. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, unanimous approval. Thank you. And as Yolanda is slipping one more speaker's card into our stack here, I think we're about up to 30. So I want to thank everyone in the audience who's joined us tonight, everyone who's joining us virtually and online. We have a tremendous amount of public engagement on this particular issue. So if you do want to speak, and if you've not yet filled out one of these speaker cards, they are in the back, and Yolanda will continue to put them at the bottom of the stack if you happen to fill one out in the next few minutes. So if you'll just get them to her, she's standing at the back table now. And thank you. Yolanda's keeping us straight all the time. All right, with that, we are moving directly into our only item of business tonight. And with that, I also want to thank our Executive Director, Greg Slay, and his team for a great choice. I'm sure we will all appreciate not coming down and fighting the session traffic at 3 or 1 this afternoon. So I know this is a little late in the evening for CRTPA, but I hope it made it a little easier for everyone to join us tonight. With that, this is a big issue, obviously. We know it's very important for a lot of folks. And to get into this, we are going to have our presentation first, just to make sure everyone has the same information. And then we will get into public speakers, hear all of your comments, and then into board discussion. Anything else,
Thank you,
Greg?
Madam Chairman. Nope, that was it.
All right, thank you.
Just briefly, what we're looking for tonight is direction on the Thomasville Road multi-use path feasibility study. If you all choose to move the project forward, it would move into design. If you all recall, probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago, you approved monies in design as part of our budget process. So if you do approve it, we would come back to you next month with a TIP amendment to actually move those monies into the budget for the design. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jack Castrua. He's our project manager for this project, and let him introduce the consulting team, and we'll take it from there.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Today we have,
Jack.
Technically evening, but
I was going to say.
I didn't even hear you over the microphone. I just heard you from normal. Today we have a couple representatives from Kimley Horn. We have Lindsay, who's up on the dais, and Kate. And Kate will be making a presentation in a few minutes, and I just wanted to update you as to where we were in September and what's occurred since that time. We had taken the first round of public engagement and come up with a existing conditions report. And since that time, that was in September, since that time, we've had our second round of public engagement. We had a safety comparison presentation at the retreat. We have also developed preferred alternatives, developed the cost estimates, and aggregated a couple things in the report. If you went online to see the report or got a different copy, aggregated some design considerations as part of that as well. And then we created and developed the final draft of the feasibility, or the draft feasibility report. And all that's online. It's in your agenda via links. So there's a lot of information out there, including a rather lengthy comment log, comments from electronically that we received that aren't in the comment log, and also written comments that were scanned that aren't in the comment log. So collectively, those comment logs, and as well as the other electronic and paper comments that we've received are in total pretty significant in terms of public engagement. And with that, I will turn it over to Kate, who has a presentation on the project, and we'll go from there.
Yep. Can everyone hear me okay? All right, cool. I never know with a mask. So good evening. We're excited to be here today to finally talk about the final recommendation for the Thomasville Road multi-use path feasibility study. So the last time, as Jack said, we were in front of you was back in September. So tonight we're really going to focus on the public engagement that has occurred since we last talked in September, go through some of the alternatives that were evaluated, and discuss the preferred alternative for the alignment of this project. All right, great. That moved forward smoothly. So since our last update to you all, we have met with additional stakeholders and agency partners, including the City of Tallahassee Parks and Rec, City of Tallahassee Underground Utilities, Leon County Public Works, as well as the Blueprint Intergovernmental Agency. We've also met with other advisory groups within the community, so that includes the Joint City-County Bicycle Working Group and the City of Tallahassee Parks and Rec Advisory Board. In addition to those, we continued to meet with neighborhood association meetings, or neighborhood and different homeowners association. I think the total came to about 9. Several of them we've met with 3 to even 4 times to either give a presentation, to answer questions, just have discussion. So the engagement with stakeholders really continued to be robust through about end of November. So the second round of public engagement kicked off in about October, November. We took a similar approach where we had virtual and in-person options. One thing we heard from you all at that September meeting was to extend the boundary in which we mailed postcards to let people, property owners know. So we actually did 1,000 feet each way from Thomasville Road, and then kind of extended it a little bit to Meridian and Miccosukee and Capitol Circle Northeast. And I think at the end of the day, I think about 4,400 postcards were mailed out to property owners to advertise the engagement for this second round. So we had a ArcGIS, which is a mapping tool essentially. We had a story map online. We had about 1,500 people view that story map. That's not comments. We're just able to see how many people visited the essentially story map that we created for that project. And in coordination with that, we had 3 live question and answer sessions where people could join in and ask any questions, get some clarification on the information that was presented on the ArcGIS story map online. We also had some in-person events, 2 pop-up events. We had several people attend those just along the project corridor. Those were really focused for more people who maybe hadn't known about the project and wanted to come out and find a little bit more information. But we had a large open house that was held at the School of Arts and Sciences, and we had over 75 members of the public come and attend that in-person public meeting. It was outside, people wore masks, socially distanced, so it was a really, really great turnout. And I mean, up until 10 minutes ago, Jack is still receiving comments from the public. So we have received an enormous amount of comments from the public, whether it's support or opposition, or just asking some more questions about this feasibility study and the next steps. It really has been encouraging to see the public so engaged in this process. So we're going to go through the preferred alternatives. What we'll do is we'll go through the segments. We broke Thomasville Road out into 3 different segments, if you remember the last September meeting, and then the Market District connection. We'll talk a little bit about what was evaluated, but then get to the preferred alignment for each. One thing I wanted to note first off is for any of the preferred alternatives to be successful, the existing bike lane, which begins around Waverly Road and heads north, as well as the Gore areas, which are located near Post Road, would have to be removed in order to be able to gain enough space to accommodate a multi-use trail along Thomasville Road. So that's something we just want to make sure you all understand as you're having the discussion tonight, is the bike lane and the Gore areas would be removed along Thomasville Road to allow for what we are recommending. So segment 1, this is from Benton Road up to Armistead Road. We looked at several different alternatives. Thomasville Road East and Thomasville Road West is where we started for every segment along this project. Those were similar to one another. On the west side, there is more constrained right-of-way. We also looked at several other options. One of them was Truscott Drive in Benton Hills neighborhood. This was quickly removed from the table just because there are so many residential driveways along that short segment. I think it was about 30 different driveways that we would have to cross over. It was just kind of taken off, as well as there was a lot of opposition from those within the Benton Hills neighborhood. There's also the Benton Hills Nature Center Trail along McCord Ditch, as well as the Post Road to McCord Ditch to Benton Road. Both of those kind of pose some problems because the termini on the southern part came directly in between where the intersection is at Thomasville Road and Benton Road, and where the existing RRFB is. So, you know, at that point, there would have to be a decision to make, and we really wanted to come to a clean terminus. And then there was also the Post Road loop option. This went behind some businesses that would have to use their property and where they have an access road. So that wasn't really supported by the businesses, though it was supported by the neighborhood association.
Katie, thank you for this. If you don't mind any acronyms, will you let us know what they are? Just
yes.
Transportation planning gets pretty complicated sometimes.
Okay.
So just for all of us.
Did I say something that I need to?
RFB? RFB? Was that right?
Oh, yes, rapid flashing beacon. So where you press and you would cross the road. Yes, sorry about that. Yes. Okay, so going to the preferred for this segment, we are preferring Thomasville Road East just because there was additional more space with some of the right-of-way that would better accommodate a multi-use path, as well as a buffer between that multi-use path and the travel lanes. And ideally, you want as much space as possible, so it was less constrained than the west side of the road. We left the Post Road option on there as well, just because that will need to be further evaluated of what could possibly be done when the drainage ditch is covered, just to understand, is that something that could be feasible to allow us to avoid a lot of the curb cuts and business entrances that are located there at Thomasville Road on the east side. Many of you are very familiar with the gas stations that there and the Sun Trust, and it's all in quick succession of one another. So segment 2, this is Armistead Road to Woodgate Way. In this section, we only really evaluated the east and the west side of Thomasville Road. The Thomasville Road on the west side does have some constrained right-of-way, as also a lot of grade changes in front of places like Savannah Trace. It's a lot of elevation that the east side of the corridor doesn't have. Both sides have oak trees, but the ones on the west side are a little bit more unavoidable within the right-of-way that's there. So for this segment, we are recommending the east side of Thomasville Road. So it would continue on the east side up to Wood Gateway. One thing we want to note is we're also recommending that there be a sidewalk that goes from the entrance of Waverly up to Wood Gateway. Right now, the sidewalk there is subpar, and we heard from a lot of residents within Waverly that really wanted some connection to this multi-use path. So it'd be recommended that there would be the sidewalk would be upgraded in that area to allow for connectivity to this network of the multi-use path trail. So the third segment and the final segment along Thomasville Road, we looked at Thomasville Road east and west for this part of the corridor. Both have available right-of-way with some areas of constraints. On the west side of the road, it's really in front of the School of Arts and Sciences, and on the east side, it's really near Dorothy B. Oven Park and where the current fire station is there. Both cause a little bit of constraints within that area. One thing that we did look at was the idea of this connection of Midtown to Market. So we knew that we wanted to connect to the Market District, and we knew that we wanted to avoid Thomasville Road at the I-10 interchange. And really the only place to get to that point would be utilizing Timberlane School Road, which is accessible on the west side from Thomasville Road. So that being said, this is where we switch over from the east side of Thomasville Road to the west side of Thomasville Road. There is ample right-of-way south of Live Oak Plantation Road, but this allows us to get to the next segment, which we'll talk about Market District, to allow for that connectivity up to that activity generator of Market District. We also wanted to note that there is the Goose Pond Trail. There's a future connector, so it wouldn't be recommended of this project, but it's of a future study to make sure that where we would cross over at Wood Gateway, there would be something that would continue on into the future that could be done as a future project to make the connection to Goose Pond and that Goose Pond connector to really just extend the connectivity that this project would bring and allow more residents to be able to use it and utilize Market, District, and Midtown. So the next section is the Market District connection. We looked at a lot of different options here. Live Oak Plantation Road was one of them. Metropolitan Boulevard was another one that would include some retrofitting as well, because there's currently bike lanes on Metropolitan Boulevard and a sidewalk as well. We also looked, there's FDOT right-of-way that would go around and connect over to where there is an existing FDOT right-of-way that connects down to Timberlane School Road. Those three options all bring you to Timberlane School Road, and that's where we need to go under I-10 to avoid I-10. As you move north, the option was to continue on Timberlane School Road, or there's an electric easement that goes on the western border of Gilchrist Elementary School. And we evaluated both those options. There's some grade issues as you get to Timberlane School Road and Timberlane Road. On Timberlane Road, you have an existing sidewalk. You have an existing sidewalk that's on the south side of Timberlane Road in front of Gilchrist. And then we would look at Martin Hurst, which then connects up to some projects that are being completed that include transportation improvements being completed by the city and Blueprint. So that being said, the recommended alternative for this segment is to actually use Live Oak Plantation Road. There's available right-of-way. We would recommend that it would be on the south side of Live Oak Plantation Road to avoid crossing Live Oak Plantation Road because that intersection is pretty busy, as anybody who has ever tried to drive at that intersection, let alone walk or ride a bike. So we would stay on the south side, and then we would have some type of crossing that would be implemented at Live Oak Plantation Road and Timberlane School Road. We would continue along Timberlane School Road. There is available right-of-way there to accommodate a trail as well as have a buffer. We would then use the electric easement and then connect up to Timberlane School Road and then take Martin Hurst to where the City of Tallahassee and Blueprints improvements begin as part of the Market District connection. One thing we did want to note is there has been a history along Live Oak Plantation Road of the residents there that weren't in favor of having multimodal facilities. Right now there is a sidewalk on the northern side of the corridor that goes over to Martin Hurst Road is what it's called in that area. And can stop short. So we would continue to look at the DOT right-of-way, which would cause us to cross Live Oak Plantation Road and Metropolitan Road as an option if the support wasn't there along Live Oak Plantation Road, though the right-of-way is available along Live Oak Plantation.
Just leave it right there for a second, Kate.
Yep.
And we do have an alternative on this one as well that utilizes the DOT right-of-way, and that's the yellow line that you see.
Yep.
Sure. So the yellow line that you see on the map on the south side is the interstate is the DOT right-of-way that comes around and ties back in. We kept that in there just as a holder, just to make sure that we have that available.
Mm-hmm. So here's a map of essentially the preferred alignment. So we would be on the east side from Benton Road up to Woodgate Way. Woodgate Way is where we would cross, and then we would be on the west side of Thomasville Road, and then we would take Live Oak Plantation Road to Timberlane School Road, through the electric easement to Timberlane Road to Martinhurst, where we would recommend some type of, there'd have to be additional analysis kind of at that intersection when Martinhurst and Timberlane Road meet one another, and then continue up until where the Market District improvements are occurring. So this is a map, and that also includes the sidewalk on the west side from Waverly to Woodgate Way, and then a future proposed project that would hopefully expand that through the Goose Pond connector. So wanted to touch on the preliminary construction cost estimates. So these are planning level cost estimates. So DOT has something called long range estimates that look at the cost of things now for construction. So that $4.8 million that you're seeing are the costs of now based on construction costs, which greatly change by the time projects actually come to fruition and begin construction. So what we did was we applied almost an inflation factor to that to get to the higher $6.2 million. We did include some additional or some details as to what was included, the construction of a 12-foot multi-use path, knowing that in some places it would be 10 feet instead of 12 feet, just also looking at curb and gutter, like we mentioned, the removal of the bike lanes in the gore areas would cause curb and gutter to need to be removed, some drainage utility pole relocations, but we just want to note there's a lot of analyses and other costs that are associated with this. This doesn't include the design costs. This is really the construction of the project. So we just wanted to explain some of that today of this is kind of that first initial shot of project costs for a project at a planning level. And yeah. And then some design recommendations we also had in the feasibility report. So some things we mentioned were a meandering design. This aids in slowing down bicyclists in key locations like intersections and driveways where you do have grade changes. It makes it a little bit more enjoyable for users. It allows us to address things like tree locations and topography. Some places where this can be achieved is north of Armistead Road. There's really ample right-of-way in that area, as well as south of Live Oak Plantation Road on the west side. The right-of-way along Thomasville Road really varies throughout, but there's definitely some key locations with this meandering design is absolutely achievable. We mentioned the crossing treatments and signage. This is really to just make sure that they are highly visible. There are stop bars and signs at all driveways, including private, as well as intersections. You can apply things like travel speed limits or etiquette signs. There's an example from a trail right there. This is something that we would just recommend be included in beyond the design phase in the design phase to understand that we really need to have highly visible things because there is a lot of movement along Thomasville Road. Site distance, this was something that we actually heard from a lot of the public, and we want to make sure that site distance is further analyzed along the corridor to understand the visibility of motorists at some key locations along the project corridor. A wide buffer, we want to make sure we exceed the 4-foot buffer where feasible along this corridor. And then some of the constrained areas, there are some constrained right-of-way areas along the corridor, and we want to make sure that there are some innovative solutions for looking at the trail design to preserve tree canopy and reduce the impacts where that limited right-of-way is located. And then we just talked a little briefly in the report about user types. Micromobility is new. It's new in how we are seeing these along our existing trails and other facilities. Fortunately, City of Tallahassee has outlined that e-scooters have the same rules as bicyclists, including passing, parking, and speed. So you guys are already in a good place for understanding how we would manage some of these different user types along a proposed trail like this. So with that, we can get to the good part and some questions and public comment, and yeah.
Thank you very much, as always, Katie, and it is good to see both you and Lindsay in person.
Yeah.
Most of our presentations for the last couple of years have been virtual, so it's good to have you here at the table with us. And just as a reminder for the board, we're going to not have questions right now with the presentation. We're going to go straight into public comment. And I'm guessing you're pushing these over here, so I have to make
I think
mistakes
you
on
get to
everybody's
do it.
names,
Yeah, we've
right?
got about 30, 31 speaker cards.
Okay. I'm a lot better with the details in the agenda item than I am with pronouncing everyone's names, so I beg your forgiveness as we get going in this. So just, that's where I was going. Yes, sir. Our Councilor Williams is signaling to me to remind everyone, as I was about to too, that you do have 3 minutes. I know this can be a frustration for some folks, but it allows us to get through all of the public speakers and have enough time for everyone. You do have the option to just wave your hand in support. If you're number 28 and everyone has said everything on your list, you can just wave in support and we will take that. But if you want to share your thoughts, we want to hear them tonight. So we'll move through this rather quickly. I will call the first person and the second person just so you're kind of teed up. So our first person tonight is Mary Kay Faulkner, and second person will be Jane Fletcher.
If you would, please state your name and address for the record so we have that. Thank you.
I was just testing you, Greg. Yeah, I knew I was going to forget
This is not
something.
my first rodeo.
Thank you. Mary Kay Faulkner, 2140 Armistead Road. Good evening, Commissioners. The Citizens Multimodal Advisory Committee voted unanimously to approve the feasibility study report on January 4th. The report is a massive piece of work. It documents right-of-way, conditions along the corridor, and extensive public engagement. That vote of the CMAC was our signal that this project is ready for design. I'd like to touch on 3 points that I raised at the CRTPA meeting back in the fall. First, there was a request for a loop option in segment 1, which is the Benton Road to Armistead Road segment. This request was met with a similar future alternative, which is along the stormwater ditch that will have a culvert installed this year. That route would follow Post Road out to Thomasville Road. It is a wait-and-see option, which is smart considering the major changes in infrastructure that are expected there. The path is not going through McCord Park. Hopefully we can clear that up for those that don't know that yet. 2, I asked for the calculation of trips generated at entries and exits along the corridor. That was pushed off to the design phase. I was also interested in motorist crash data, which is also hopefully in the design phase, and I think the Commissioner Williams-Cox also requested that information. Third, and finally, I mentioned the importance of the design phase. Many of the questions that people in the community were asking were considered appropriate only for design. Design is where, hopefully, FDOT, other transportation staff, and a consultant with expertise in urban multi-use paths can respond to existing challenges that we've already shared and those that are associated with the upgrades. In design, people and paths come together. Regarding paths and trails in other counties represented on the CRTPA, Wakulla is loaded with multi-use path mileage, and their network is continuing to expand. Gadsden would like a multi-use path from Leon County to Havana. Jefferson is waiting for its multi-use path from Leon County to Monticello. Different pots of money for these paths, but all counties want them. The businesses in those communities want them too. The testimony at the CRTPA meeting in the fall shared many safety deficiencies along the corridor. The current infrastructure is unsafe and unacceptable. It's time for design. Thank you.
Our next speaker, y'all can clap for each other, it's okay, we'll go back. No doubt. It helps with the nervousness, right? So Jane Fletcher, followed by Marcia Millay. I think I got that right? Okay. Yes, probably not. I'll blame Craig. Go right ahead, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Jane Fletcher, and I'm here representing Capital City Cyclists. My address is 4149 Arklow Drive. Capital City Cyclists is a nonprofit organization with the purpose of promoting bicycling for transportation, sport, health, and recreation through education, advocacy, and rider development in the Tallahassee area. Capital City Cyclists has hundreds of members and is a member-supported organization. We support the Thomasville Road multi-use path and moving forward to the design phase. And we have 4 main reasons. 1, there is a real need. The feasibility study was excellent, and moving to the design phase can help resolve some of the remaining issues. And mainly, the current situation is not safe. Need. There's a significant need for improved multimodal facilities along Thomasville Road connecting the Market District to Midtown. The sidewalks and bike lanes north of Benton and south of Live Oak Plantation are unsafe. These facilities are not adequate to address the need for safe walking, running, bicycling for people living in the neighborhoods along Thomasville Road and people traveling by foot or bicycle to and from Midtown and Marketplace and places in between. There was an excellent feasibility study. CRTPA's Thomasville Road multi-use path feasibility study reflects an excellent effort to reach out to and include users and residents. Many people participated, and the CRTPA staff and consultants listened. The preferred options for the segments reflect a real effort to build consensus and address concerns. The study shows that neighborhoods and destinations can be connected for safe, non-motorized use. Third, design phase. The project should move forward on the design phase where the more difficult issues, such as driveways, intersections, and impacts to trees can be addressed. The same way that the study addressed issues of contention, the design phase can bring people together to balance the corridor attributes that local residents value with safety concerns that must be addressed. And finally, safety. If the design phase does not move forward, people will continue to walk, stroll with children, and bicycle along narrow sidewalks. They will cross driveways and intersections that are not improved for safety. A vote against or to delay the plan is a vote to continue use of inadequate sidewalks and dangerous bike lanes. These unsafe conditions must be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. This will be Marcia, followed by Lori Kobiger.
Hi, I'm Marcia Meal. I live at 1452 Mitchell Avenue. I'm in Benton Hills, and as you know, I haven't been able to use my road for a while. But it brings growth and community. And one of the things I see constantly is commuters going up Mitchell Avenue from all parts of the city. And so it's here today. And so one way or another, people are going to go from place to place. So currently, there is a need here in Tallahassee. Florida is #1 in the country for pedestrian deaths. The other thing is that this trail makes connections, not just to Market Square and Midtown, but to all the parks, the schools, the businesses that are along the corridor. It connects neighborhoods to neighborhoods. It connects neighbors to churches, neighbors to schools. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to have children walk to school again? During the design phase, there are hundreds of trails and multi-use trails throughout the state. As you travel to other areas where there are already trails, as they mentioned in the presentation, urban trails by definition have more crossings and more driveways and more challenges. In 2011, the National Association of City Transportation Officials, NACO, released an urban street design guide. It showed how to create substantive, safe, protected infrastructure for urban bicyclists. In 2014, the Federal Highway Administration gave its unqualified support to this group and their urban design, street design guide, instructing engineers to use it in conjunction with other guides. The bicycle guide was then followed up with a transit-oriented street guide, which is also significant in this case, since that is also a bus corridor. My friends and I take bicycle vacations and getaways. This is a growing market throughout the state. One of the things we look for is transportation. Once we get there, we often don't have a bike, anything but our bikes to get to dinner or to clean up. And this corridor would connect from all the way from St. Mark's all the way up to Market Square. That's massive. That will draw in the businesses. That will draw in people. The other thing is, I would like to be able to walk to my neighbor's house. I like to ride to my neighbor's house. If this is not built, I will continue to cut through McCord Pond, go up the street, cut through, come out near Waverly to get to their houses. So ignoring the situation doesn't bring us to a solution. The undulating paths, the stoppage, the signs, the speed limit signs like congested area, yield, crossing ahead, those are all real in other communities. We saw them just this past week. I sent all the commissioners photocopies of what we saw on our last trip. The other thing that's been significant is when we look at communities, my parents lived in Apopka. I watched the North Orange Trail develop. And what happened in Winter Garden, a declining area of citrus, as obviously gone, was that it went massive.
I'm sorry, you're at 3 minutes.
Okay.
Last phrase.
Okay.
Finish that sentence if you don't.
Okay.
Thank you.
The massive improvement in the businesses and the growth and the connection of the communities and rebuilding and regenerating happened because of the trail. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Laurie Koberger.
Yes, ma'am. I'm just going to introduce, tee up our next person, who will be John Dunn. And you can go ahead, ma'am.
So I'm Laurie Koberger. I live in Woodgate. It's 3134 Brandywine Drive. And I'm here to continue on to the design phase of the project. I would really enjoy being able to get from Woodgate to my friends in Waverly and in the Midtown area safely. Right now, the Thomasville Road, the sidewalks along there are not safe. I lost all sense of where I was trying to go. Basically, I vote for moving on to the design phase.
Thank you, ma'am. As Dr. Dunn comes up, our next speaker is going to be Ann Bidley-Meyer. Good to see you.
Good to see you. My name is John Dunn. I live in 819 Shady Rest in Havana, Florida, and I had an office in Midtown for 30 years. People for Bikes did a geodata study, a gross data study on Tallahassee, and it registered in 27th percentile for safety. That means that 2/3 of the city of the United States have streets that are safer than what we have. Now, I was lucky or unlucky enough not to have any children, but if I had any and lived in Tallahassee, I would not allow them to ride a bicycle. My wife is a triathlete. She raced for years, so she logged the miles. Since we moved to town in '82, 130,000 miles. I've ridden 5 times in Tallahassee because it gives me. We can do better. Towns like St. Paul, Madison, and Des Moines are capital cities similar to our size, and the commonality they have are four: terrible weather, good schools, appreciation for greenways, and trails. Now, they pay for the trails out of their own infrastructure money, and we're searching for the funds to have what we need to keep children safe and people safe out of the couch cushion. We can do better.
And
Ann Bidlingmeyer, 1920 Harriet Drive, Tallahassee. Well, when I first heard of this plan, I thought, oh, wow, this is what we really need. And then I walked it and got involved in just person-to-person or road-to-person contact. And this plan is just not going to work. It works only on paper. And there is this Google map here, but it's almost like watching a game of connect the dots. This is just not practical. It's not going to work. It's a wonderful thing to think about, but when it comes right down to implementing it, I think we're going to see a whole lot of problems, not to mention the 44 cuts. Common sense tells us that there is not enough room to put in a bike path without jeopardizing user safety and destroying trees, shrubs, and greenways. And of course, that's been my interest over the years. I am giving this Vermont Bike Tours catalog to the chairman. I've been on 9 bike trips, and it seems like we should get biking professionals in to look at this plan. I don't think anybody affiliated with this group would approve what's going on here with all the problems and the congestion. This huge amount of money should be spent where it is needed and where it's going to be safe. Thank you.
thank you. And I didn't get my next name in there. Larry Gonzalez, followed by Pat Martin.
Madam Chair and members of the board, my name is Larry Gonzalez, and my address is 825 Greenbrier Lane. I'm here today as president of the Thomasville Trace Homeowners Association, and our neighborhood is opposed to the multi-use path being located on Thomasville Road. As we have stated at previous meetings, our opposition is based first and foremost on the concerns for the safety of those who will be entering and leaving neighborhoods, who will be crossing the multi-use path, and for those who will be using the path. Thomasville Road traffic moves along at speeds of 50 to 60 miles an hour, notwithstanding what the speed limits may be. We had an accident at the intersection of our neighborhood just a few days ago. Same problem that has happened in many previous accidents. There are people entering and leaving the neighborhood. Members of our neighborhood already feel that our lives are at risk every time we make a left turn coming out of the neighborhood. And we think this is only going to get worse if the multi-use path is built on Thomasville Road. Dr. Tom Haney is, I believe, is going to be speaking, and he's done some great research on the safety issues. We're totally in support of the research that he's done, indicating that this is not a safe route for a multi-use path. Our second objection has to do with the aesthetics. It's going to result in the loss of beautiful trees, and this is a beautiful segment. It's an interest area to our city. We don't think this path is going to be an asset aesthetically, and we hate to see it interfere with the entrance to many of the neighborhoods along the route. In summary, we urge a no vote on this project going forward on Thomasville Road. We urge you to do the right thing, and we think the right thing is to find some other location for this project. We're not against bicyclists, but we think this is the wrong place for it. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Pat Martin. As you join us, this one, I gotta say, handwriting I'm struggling with. Mr. or Mrs. Daryl or Darrell? I'll come. Darnell? Sir? Yes, yes, you will be next after Ms. Martin. Okay. Keeping me on my toes. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. My name is Patricia Martin. I live on Brockton Way in Rose Hollow. And I wanted to start out by talking about data and statistics and comparable analyses. So if you were to request a traffic light at the edge of your neighborhood where it joins a major road, or request a turn lane for your neighborhood, which I believe is going to be removed at Woodgate, or requested a larger street, perhaps lots of people have built new homes in your area, you would be not listened to unless you had data, statistics comparable to other situations such as you requested. Okay, for 1 year, we have earnestly asked this group to provide us with a study of the number of pedestrians and the number of bicyclists going up and down this route of Thomasville Road. We were told that's not how we do it. And so since you're so concerned about safety, we will just identify some comparable cities. One of the comparable cities was Marathon, Florida, which is in the Keys. Another one was Dallas, Texas, and there were several others that I didn't recognize. At any rate, they did not relate to our 44 cuts on this stretch of Thomasville Road. Over Christmas at Amelia Island, I was on a bicycle, and an e-bicyclist came up behind me, startled me, and I fell. I broke my tibia and my elbow, and I avoided a brain bleed because I had on a helmet. But at any rate, the issue of e-bikes on this street, on this path, along with pedestrians and e-scooters and e-skateboards, et cetera, plus bicycles going two ways, and pedestrians, is quite frightening. And those people who keep saying that the sidewalks along Thomasville Road are inadequate, I and many other people I know use them, and we don't find them inadequate. So I guess my situation means I've taken one for the Gipper. But the public policy in this community many years ago was established that pedestrians and bicyclists would be separate. That's why we have sidewalks and bike trails. Now, you're calling this a multi-use trail, but it's really a bicycle trail. Your advisory committee has never included organized pedestrian groups, and there are several in this town with hundreds of members. So, since I can't stand, I would like to ask all the people who are here against this project to please stand for me. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. Thank you, sir, for understanding my challenge with the names. And following Mr. Darrell will be Ash Williams.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Franklin Darnell. I live at 800 Greenbrier Lane. This afternoon, I sent an email to Rick Minor, and if I could just read that into this hearing. Dear Mr. Minor, confirms January 28 USPS delivery of your January 24 letter. I want to echo the same concerns as expressed in earlier emails to you from Larry Gonzalez, Fred Thompson, and Judy Powell, which represent all 12 residents on Greenbrier Lane. I've been an insurance adjuster in Tallahassee since 1962, and I feel this proposed route is extremely dangerous. Please see attached photos of January 27 at 7:30 a.m. of an accident at our intersection for the first phase, and you will note the 30-mile-per-hour school caution light for northbound traffic at the time this accident occurred. Also attached are photos of my vehicle as I attempted to leave, making a left turn this morning, and the extremely limited sight that you will have from the stop bar, and also from where the present sidewalk for pedestrians is located. There are many issues with this pathway which do not feel have been adequately addressed, including limited vision especially for vehicles attempting to enter the intersection from the east side of Thomasville Road. When we moved to Greenbrier more than 13 years ago, the posted speed limit was 35 miles per hour, which has now been raised to 45 miles per hour. And a TPD officer who was foreign and made a speeding stop several weeks ago afterwards told me that it was being described as the Thomasville Road racetrack. We hope you and the other members will vote against this proposed pathway. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. All right, we've got Mr. Williams, followed by John Asbell.
Good evening, Commissioners, and thank you for having us here. My name is Ash Williams. I live at 1337 Preakness Point. I'm Vice President of the Preakness Point Homeowners Association and represent on behalf of our neighbors our opposition to this project. I'm both a cyclist and a walker, and I walk on this the existing Thomasville Road sidewalks and on the Hermitage Trail probably 6 days a week, and I often bicycle on them as well. There's no question they're not ideal, and part of the reason is, as many others have stated, the traffic on Thomasville Road is both voluminous and traveling at highway-like speeds, commonly north of 55 miles an hour. I took a look at the recommendations of the American Association of State Highways and Transportation Officials, and they particularly note that with regard to bicycle trails that parallel other roads, frequency of driveway cuts, commercial entrances, and residential points of ingress and egress make those roads particularly hazardous and may likely increase the probability of accidents and the frequency thereof. There's another factor here that's very simple. We've all grown up and learned to drive in the United States of America. We have a convention of driving on the right-hand side of the road. When Americans go to England, they have a hell of a time driving safely because their natural reflexes for safety and motor memory, muscle memory, are opposite because vehicles are coming from directions they're not expecting. The same is true when you put wheeled traffic in the form of bicycles, scooters, wheelchairs, or other devices going in the same direction of traffic. The muscle memory and the sensory habits of motorists are not to expect wheeled traffic coming from certain directions. So looking at the ASHO study, they specifically say motorists entering or crossing the roadway will not notice bicyclists approaching from their right because they don't expect wheeled traffic from that direction. That's just the simple reality of risk we're talking about. I recently retired from being the Executive Director and Chief Investment Officer of the Florida State Board of Administration. I've spent my life allocating capital and assessing risks. The risks here outweigh the merits for allocating capital to this project. I'm sure, as was mentioned earlier, there are other counties, other locations with a better and more justified risk-adjusted use for this capital, and I would urge you not to anchor your decision-making and effort to date, but to go forward with a view that there may be competing uses that are better justified than this. Thank you.
As Mr. Aswell joins us, our next speaker will be Tom Haney. Welcome, sir.
My name is John Asbell. I reside at 1325 Point. And I feel a little unusual here being opposed to something that I would normally be in favor of. But this particular proposal is unsafe to motorists, bicyclists, and pedestrians. And I want to only address one particular element of the study, feasibility report, and it was in the safety review and comparable report where a lady recently referred to the marathon situation. You take the data from that, and Tom Haney has pointed this out in his analysis. If you take that data, you will see that if everything were comparable, the number of accidents and deaths will really rise to an unacceptable level if what happens here is what marathon is. But it's worse than that. I lived, prior to moving back to this area 2 years ago, lived in the Lower Keys for over 20 years, either full-time or part-time, and have driven through Marathon hundreds and hundreds of times. All you have to do is get on Google Earth and look at what they call a multi-use path in that area. They have an improved sidewalk on one side, an improved sidewalk on the other side. Yes, one's a little wider than the other, but it's not striped indicating two-way traffic. Also, for the majority of it, in the highway, there's also the traditional bike path with an arrow flowing with the flow of traffic. It's not a comparable, and in fact, their numbers, if you can imagine how much worse it would be if their numbers were truly correct. Our situation here is so much worse than what you have in Marathon that I think we're just asking for a severe number of injuries and deaths from this current design. It needs to be reviewed, redesigned. Obviously, the paths need to be improved, but the multi-use aspect of it is going to cause great harm to a lot of people. Thank you very much.
Following Mr. Haney will be Bob Guido.
I'm Tom Haney. I live at 1329 Preakness Point. I'm going to talk today a little bit about blind spots. When we first heard about this, I was very concerned because those of us who live on the side roads, we face trying to get on and off Thomasville Road with heavy traffic every day. And just a thought that you're going to put a third highway or third lane of traffic with bicycles, e-bicycles, skateboards, and scooters going two different directions and adding that to our problem is very scary. So I went out as soon as I heard about this, and I got on the left-hand turn lane to see how dangerous it would be if all this traffic was coming. And quickly I found out that there would be situations where I never saw the cyclist coming from behind me until I was 90 degrees to traffic, broadside. So I call this a blind spot. So we've been told, just look, turn your head. Well, unless you can turn your head further than me, you can't see but 90 degrees when you turn your head. You got a seatbelt on. There is a blind spot, and your rearview mirror doesn't pick it up. So you're going to miss people coming up from behind you no matter what until it's too late. And the only way you could see them if you could turn your head more than 90 degrees, which you can't, or even if you could do that, the heavy traffic coming from the other direction, it could block your view of this cyclist coming up. So we are also told, just live with it. Well, if living with it means that I've got to face the situation that I have to make an instantaneous decision whether to hit this cyclist that I can't see, or slam on my brakes and get hit broadside, or rear-ended and cause a tremendous wreck on Thomasville Road, I don't want to deal with it. So I'm telling you that blind spots are real. It's a real danger. When you've got two-way traffic and you're trying to cross it, it's going to create accidents. It's not a question of how often. It will happen. So just remember, blind spots and intersections cannot be changed with any design study. So I would encourage you to stop this now. I'm afraid if you go to the design study, it's going to be an automatic yes. Thank you.
All right, we will hear from Mr. Guido, followed by Chloe Wilcox.
My name is Bob Guido. I live at 1328 Peacefield Place. And I'd like to thank the commissioners that we have met with more than once, with my wife Lori and several of our neighbors. We have discussed many of these issues. We have discussed the safety issues. We have discussed the tree issues. We have discussed the ranking issues, the criteria issues that we have really dug into. And it brings the question, could this project really be even ranked in the first tier? We have really looked hard at that. And so, as Dr. Haney just said, this project goes to the design stage, it's a done deal. And if it goes to the design stage, it's not going to fix the real problems with this project. This project just doesn't fit. My wife and I are big bikers. We take our bikes on vacation with us. And I find myself in a strange situation being on the opposite side of this. At face value, it sounds like a great idea. But if you really look at the particulars and you dig into it, it's really, really unsafe. And I have to ask this one Last question. We've been told that the path is unsafe to go down Trescott. It's unsafe to go through McCord. But it's safe to go up Thomasville Road. I just don't understand that because it doesn't make sense. And, you know, with that thought, I'd just like to end and say we don't really need a highway on top of a highway. We really don't need that. And I respectfully ask your vote for a no vote on this, not a delay, but a no vote, and move on to a more deserving project. Thank you, and I really appreciate your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Gatto. We have Chloe Wilcox, followed by Wayne Blanton.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Chloe Wilcox. I live at 1309 Leawood Drive and attend the School of Arts and Sciences on Thomasville Road as a 7th grader. I'm here to speak in support of the proposed multi-use trail. I ride my bike on Thomasville Road almost daily, and it's not currently a pedestrian and cyclist safe roadway. I also attend a school that would be directly affected in a positive way by the trail. But those are my opinions. Let me share some facts. Florida leads the nation in annual cycling fatalities with an average of 160 deaths and 800 major injuries per year. In fact, there are people in this room today who have lost family and friends to automobile collisions while cycling. According to the United States Department of Transportation, cyclists and pedestrians hit at 40 miles per hour have an 80% chance of being seriously injured. The speed limit on Thomasville Road is currently 45 miles per hour, and most people don't even obey that. Trails add value to new homes and are consistently among the top 4 community amenities sought out by prospective homeowners of all ages. And every $1 spent on trails saves approximately $3 in medical expenses, according to the American Heart Association. And finally, bicycle riding on paved trails brings in more than $6 billion to Florida annually. So in conclusion, the proposed trail would significantly increase pedestrian and cyclist safety, be financially beneficial to nearby homes and businesses and the community as a whole, and reduce the number of automobile trips on an already congested roadway. And if I could leave you with this, with all due respect, this trail isn't being built for the past generations. It's being built for the future generations, for my kids and their kids and their kids. And we want a safe alternative to automobiles. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Wayne Blanton. I live at 1319 Peaceville Place. Not a single person today has said you're against bike paths. Not one person. We favor bike paths. We favor them going in the same direction as traffic, I will tell you that. Because what this is a safety issue. If you try to turn left on Thomasville Highway into Tallahassee Nurseries, for instance, you have 2 choices when you're there. You look, and if there's no bike coming and there's no traffic coming, you scoot across that road into Tallahassee Nurseries. You know why? Because if you don't, you're going to get run over by that 36,000 cars that drive up and down Thomasville Highway every day. Or your second choice is you have blind spots at numerous places there, Preakness Point, Tallahassee Nurseries, where we live, Peaceville Place. You have blind spots all over the place. So when you get ready to turn at Tallahassee Nurseries and go left, you scoot across that road as fast as you can. Now, what this is about, and you've heard numerous speakers say this, it's about safety. You're not going to change the driving habits of most people in Tallahassee. I'm firmly convinced of that because I live on Thomasville Highway, and I know you're not going to change driving habits. This is about safety. This is about not having the ability to see behind you in numerous places when you're turning left. We are not against bike paths. What we are for is for safe bike paths. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We're moving right along. Y'all are doing well, so thank you. Steve Berthman, followed by Neil Charnas. I hope I got close. There we go. And I'll just go ahead and call the third name here, Ted Thomas. Those will be our next 3 speakers. Mr. Berthman? Welcome, sir.
My name is Steve Bertman. I live at Waverly, 1015 Waverly Road. And first of all, I just want to say thanks to all of you, and thanks to the staff. I mean, who knew that a path was going to cause this much controversy? I mean, it's a flat roadway. It's not a homeless shelter. It's not a garbage transfer station. You know, this is an infrastructure that isn't really that, I would say, that high impact. You know, I've heard a lot of concern about safety, but if we really wanted to be safe and we really cared about this, we would reduce the speed of the road. I would suspect there would be a whole group of other people, myself included, would be not wanting to be inconvenienced, or having an extra 6 minutes in their car would drive them out. So, in summation, I would just say, you know, it's a path, folks. It's not going to bring about the fall of the republic if we build this. It really isn't. And it isn't a shout out to new generations. You know, this is not a bike versus pedestrian world. It's a car versus everybody else world. And if we get around that, maybe we can make some choices, and we can kind of plan for the future. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate all that you guys are doing, because sitting here for the next hour, listening to everyone complain about a road, a path, I think is a little harsh. And I want to thank you very much for your time. Good.
Commissioners, Neil Charnas. I live at 1325 Peacefield Place. I'm a resident who walks daily along that particular corridor near my home. I actually applaud the idea of having cyclists provided with a safe pathway. However, this particular multi-use pathway shouldn't shift risk from cyclists to pedestrians. Unless it segregates cyclists and pedestrians, there's a significant risk of serious injury and death, particularly to seniors, should cyclists collide with them. As you're aware, Tallahassee has an increasing proportion of seniors who are more likely to be walking than cycling. I've conducted research for Florida DOT on older driver and pedestrian safety, including projects on motorists, cyclists, and pedestrians, finding in one particular study that pedestrians in parking lots were more likely to be hit by a vehicle backing up than other age groups, meaning that they were unable either to see the vehicle or to take evasive action quickly enough when someone carelessly backed out of a parking space. The same risk of being unable to react quickly to careless cyclists would put seniors like me and my neighbors at risk when walking a multi-use path. The 10 to 12-foot wide path would support both cyclists and pedestrians, traveling both north and south. Other people have made this point already. My concern is that there may also be inadequate spacing for both user groups. During COVID, when I walk on the 4-foot sidewalk, I have to deviate onto the street and into the bicycle lane on Thomasville to provide 6 feet of distance, as recommended by CDC. Not sure how this could be done safely if cyclists are bearing down on me from both behind and from in front, along with other pedestrians. I'm hoping the planners will ensure segregated pathways, not a single multi-use path, to ensure safety of pedestrians. Another hazard, and people have mentioned this already, is the 41st streets and cuts along Thomasville Road. At rush hour, and people have mentioned this too, it's already very difficult for vehicles leaving my neighborhood either to make a right turn and particularly a left onto Thomasville, given the heavy traffic volume. If you add a stream of cyclists to the mix, that will clearly increase the risk to those cyclists, in part because there's poor visibility for motorists to detect oncoming cyclists and very narrow time gaps to cross into their neighborhood streets. In summary, I like the idea of providing more protection to cyclists and encouraging bicycle use. However, the current plan appears to be inadequate, shifting risk from cyclists to pedestrians. For me and my neighbors, that's an unacceptable trade-off. I hope you'll vote no. Thank you.
Following Mr. Thomas will be Jimmy Gilson. close. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Ted Thomas. I live at 1469 Vucare, Tallahassee, 32308. Commissioners, my message today is similar to what it was in September when I spoke to you. It's about safety. It's not about pedestrians against bikes, or cars against bikes, or dog walkers against bikes. It's about safety, safety, safety. You've heard it from others, and I totally agree with that. Is it safe really for a child to cross Woodgate Way, 4 lanes of traffic, because they have to move from one side of the road on the bike path to the other? Is that truly safe? Is it also safe for you as a commission to put 3 different uses on a 12-foot path? Bicycles, pedestrians, dog walkers, skateboarders, and others? I think that the answer to that is no. If your goal is to have a pleasurable trike ride, Thomasville Road is not the place to be. It's not the St. Mark's Trail that travels through small communities and has a median that separates that bike path with trees and other native vegetation. If your goal is to get people out of their cars, we already have a bike path on Thomasville Road. My suggestion is improve it, and you will have achieved your goal of getting people out of their cars, or at least attempting to do that. In addition, we have sidewalks on Thomasville Road. They may not be the best, but why don't we use some of this money to improve those sidewalks? And again, it's on both sides of the road. Commissioners, both local and adjoining counties, help the residents and children in our community to be safe and choose another attainable and safe bike path. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. As you approach, our next speaker will be Hans Van Tol. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Jimmy Glisson. I live at 1307 Peaceville Place. We've lived there since 1992. We were the third house built on that. There have been a lot of things said. I won't try to repeat a lot of them, but the first thing I want to say is I mentioned to one of your board members, I wish we'd had this meeting this afternoon at Thomasville Road. They're around Woodgate, between there and Tallahassee Nursery, and you would see a vivid picture of what people are talking about. I've been riding a bike since I was 4 years old. I rode it to school when I was in elementary school. I'm not opposed to kids riding bikes. I think it's great. We're not a bunch of old folks living on these streets. We do have children on these streets and grandchildren, and it is a safety issue. I'm a retired risk manager like Mr. Darnell. I've handled many claims in this city, and the people that are sitting outside waiting for this path to come, and you think it's a joke, but it's not. Look at the lawyers' pictures on the buses driving up and down the street. The issue with us, if I'm trying to turn out and go left, God forbid, because people, when they get to the hill at Tallahassee Nursery, they're doing 45 to 60 to 70 miles an hour. I have had many instances where we have gotten stuck in the middle of that. You're not going to be able to get out. It's going to cause problems. We have no other egress or way in and out of those neighborhoods there. The people who say they're going to come ride those bikes from Killarn and all these other places, God bless them. I'm not opposed to that either. Like I say, I'd love bike paths. But to me, this is not a project that is safe, is needed. There are other places to put it, and we would respectfully ask you to vote no on this. Thank all of you for your time. It is a tough decision. I spent most of my career in government. Like I say, I understand these things. But we appreciate it, and we respectfully ask you to vote no. Thank you.
Following Mr. Von Tol will be Jose Sanchez. Go right ahead, sir.
Good evening. So my name is Johan Van Tol. I live at 1503 Old Fort Drive here in Tallahassee. And I'm a cyclist. I try to do most of my trips in town by bicycle instead of using a car. And one of the reasons is that it's good for my health, both my physical health and my mental health. But also it's good for the environment. It saves a lot of CO2 into the environment, and it makes Tallahassee also a more livable place. Less noise, less pollution. And these are good things. So I'm also not the first time that I stand here before you, and usually I talk about traffic safety, and in particular bicycle and pedestrian safety. And I'm here to ask you to approve the feasibility study and to move towards design. Typically, I'm actually not a strong advocate of multi-use paths in an urban environment. I'd rather have on-street bicycle facilities in low-speed areas. But in the case of Thomasville Road, the high speeds and the large volume really call for separated facilities. And a multi-use path seems to be the best option within the existing right-of-way. The need is well documented by the top ranking in the Bike Path Master Plan that you recently approved. So the safety of pedestrians and cyclists will be significantly improved from the current site. Visibility will be much better. A wider width allows users to pay more attention to traffic ahead and traffic around them instead of looking at the imperfections of the narrow path in front of them. So there are certainly some challenges because of the significant cuts. However, most of these cuts are low traffic, very few are commercial cuts, and there is less than half the amount per mile than, for example, the Cascades Trail along Franklin Boulevard. In fact, a good design can then eliminate and alleviate many of the concerns that have been raised. So you have a choice to make. And the choice to me is really, do you care about people that cannot drive a car because of a medical reason, like epilepsy? Do you care about the people that want to choose an environmentally responsible means of transport? Do you care about the kids that want to walk or ride to school and have the advantages of that for their outcome of their education? Do you care about the people that cannot afford to drive a car? Do you want to move Tallahassee forward or backward? Do you want to attract young talent to come and live in an area to work here, or don't you? And do you choose people over cars, or do you choose cars over people? So if you want, I think not moving forward towards a defined design phase would really be a huge mistake. And I ask you to do the right thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Following Mr. Sanchez will be Michelle Bell.
Michelle Bull.
Bull.
Good evening, board members and fellow Tallahassee residents. My name's Jose Sanchez. I've been a member of the Tallahassee Mountain Bike Association for many years. I was president for over 3 years of the club. Currently, the club has like 250 members. And I would like to speak in support of this bike path because, quite frankly, this isn't about this community's past. It's about this community's future. And I've been riding bikes for over 20 years, and I've ridden bikes in highly congested pathways, St. Mark's Trail being one of them. But I've commuted to numerous of the tailgates at FSU's football games, and I've never hit a pedestrian that has been walking. And several of those people that have been walking have been severely drunk. So that idea that cyclists are going to be colliding with a pedestrian that's walking is just, in my opinion, simply not true. So this future that I speak of for Tallahassee is a future that promotes a healthy lifestyle, a lifestyle that attracts the type of people that you want in your community. I literally just came back from Georgia and bought 3 acres of property in Georgia. But I only bought the property because it is directly across from a bike path. That was my one condition that I told the realtor. I said, I'm buying this property here. You have to find a property that is literally, I can get on my bike from my property and ride to a trail. And that's what happened. I've also read in several articles in several magazines, including the Tallahassee Magazine, that Tallahassee is seeking to be a pedestrian-friendly community and a cycling-friendly community. Okay? And building a bike path like this would truly show that Tallahassee is moving in that direction, and it's not just words inside of an article, it's actually something they stand behind. And I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. That was just a handwriting on my part,
I'm
followed by
left-handed.
Meg Bates.
Left-handed, so it's bad. I apologize.
You're all good.
Totally my fault. My name is Michelle Bull, and I am a lifelong resident of Leon County. I hike, bike, and paddle in this community. I'm also a member of the Tallahassee Mountain Bike Association. I would like to commend the CRTPA and their contractors in developing this proposal that is both safe for pedestrians, cyclists, and as well as vehicle traffic. I have biked along the Thomasville Road corridor because it is the best connection from the north side of town to downtown. As an avid biker, we do try to ride, to and from the trails, to and from the local parks, to and from the local community activities. It is frankly terrifying. I've ridden my bike on some of these sidewalks that the residents have also walked on and have most definitely gotten slapped in the face with bushes. Many of the previous speakers that have been here today are concerned about the speed on Thomasville Road, blind spots. There's a lot of kind of traffic issues that it sounds like we're concerned that by adding more pedestrian and cycling traffic, that's going to increase our traffic safety issues. I know that we can use this multi-use project to better align traffic with residential nature of this corridor. It sounds like that in and of itself is an issue between residential areas and a high traffic corridor. Development on Gain Street and near FSU, I think, are a testament that design can change traffic patterns. I'm a stormwater professional, so I see a lot of roadways where infrastructure is being upgraded and roadways are being narrowed to reduce traffic speed and make pedestrians and traffic safer. And just, I commend recommending that this bike path be 12 feet long. That's as wide as an interstate lane, so I'm more than comfortable riding my bike next to, 5 pedestrians, 5 across. I also support Tallahassee's longstanding efforts to be a tree city by connecting existing parks and trails that the city is actively investing in. With that, I support moving to the design phase of this Thomasville Road multi-use path, and I would also support reducing the speed limit during the design phase.
Thank you, ma'am. Following Ms. Bates, we'll have Marcella Polanski. Go right ahead, ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Meg Bates. I live at 721 Kenilworth Road. I'm here to urge you to move this project forward to the design phase. As a 35-year resident of Waverly Hills, my family has utilized Thomasville Road in some form or another, driving, walking, biking, jogging, literally every day. I have watched the development and changes over this time frame along the roadway. This corridor has always been one of the most welcoming and aesthetically pleasing entrances into our city. One of the biggest changes on Thomasville has been the transition of several large single-family home sites to many small housing neighborhoods. They've helped maintain the aesthetics and character of Thomasville Road, but they've also increased the traffic. Plus, the newer developments north of Thomasville Road have begun to turn that corridor into a major expressway for people heading north. You have the opportunity today to make one of the most significant improvements to the Thomasville Road corridor that I can remember in the 35 years as a resident along that area. I urge you to do what the City Citizens Multimodal Advisory Group did and support it. You and the staff are to be commended for the excellent feasibility study and taking great efforts to get input from the community. Feasibility study is comprehensive and considers many viable options, but as expected, there are a lot of design issues to still be addressed. I'd like to mention 2 specific things for Waverly Hills. Since we're located on the west side of Thomasville Road, and that part of the sidewalk we must use to go either north or south. I'm glad to hear that the feasibility study talks about a sidewalk going north to Woodgate, but the south area, I realize there's some right-of-way issues, but it is a problem. It is our only way to get to that light at Armistead and Gardenia. The Market District connection is another critical area for us. Currently, there is no good option to get up there, and it would be an area that we would consistently ride up to, but you can't. You got to get across Thomasville Road, or you got to deal with Timber Lane, School Road, and Timber Lane. So I'm really glad, and I think the option that the study has developed is a good one. Safety's been a considerable issue for people. The current situation is not safe. I must respectfully disagree with the fact that people are suggesting what has been proposed is not workable. On the contrary, I think the feasibility study shows it's workable. And I would also clarify that we actually have a multi-use path on Thomasville Road right now. All these people are using it. They're walking, they're riding, they're jogging, they're using e-bikes, they're using scooters in a 5-lane or 5-foot walkway. It's a multi-use path now. It's inadequate and it is unsafe. People do need to look both ways when they come out of a street. I do it, and I have trained myself to make sure to look south when I'm turning that way to avoid anybody who might be walking. I wasn't going to deal with speed, but boy, I'm all in favor of lowering that. And it appears, because some of the big issues are the cuts that are made on Thomasville Road, that I guess I would urge the city to consider making no more cuts along Thomasville Road and stop that. Thank you for the opportunity for input. I urge you to move forward to the design phase. And somebody referenced the importance of biking in Tallahassee. This is the most recent Tallahassee magazine about the importance of biking.
Thank you, ma'am. Most everyone has hung to 3 minutes, but that was the bell. So if you hear that, just letting you know. Yes, ma'am, go ahead, and you're going to be followed by Catherine Ziewitz. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Marcella Poliansky, and I live at 914 Dolores Drive, 32301. I'm here today to speak in support of the Thomasville Road Multi-Use Path Project. As someone who moved to Tallahassee in 2012 with a bicycle as my only form of transportation, I quickly learned the back roads to get to work, school, and to run errands safely and efficiently, often finding the most scenic routes along the way. I'm familiar with this corridor. Over the years, I have commuted to work by bicycle at the Great Bicycle Shop and to the School of Arts and Sciences on Thomasville Road, where I currently teach. Unfortunately, cutting through back roads or wiggling through neighborhoods is not an option to get myself from my house near Cascades Park all the way to SAS. I have to, at some point, get on Thomasville Road via the bike lane or the sidewalk. I'm well aware of the infrastructure or lack thereof in certain sections, but I'm never the only person seen on the corridor. I almost always see runners, walkers, people waiting at the bus stop, or other bicyclists on both the west and east sides of the road. The Thomasville Road multi-use path will give pedestrians more visibility from traffic along the roadway. Giving citizens a 10 to 12-foot path asserts trail users as a priority and gives them the necessary space away from vehicular traffic. I personally would like to see the speed limit on the road reduced back to 35 to improve the safety for all who travel the road, pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles alike. I realize that a multi-use path on Thomasville Road will not be perfect. However, it is the best and safest option to retrofit this automobile-centric corridor to connect our city in a way that is accessible for all citizens to get from A to B. I hate to say, but a multi-use path is not a revolutionary idea. Cities all over the nation are embracing and even overjoyed by their cities' shared use trails. These trails have resulted in numerous benefits such as increased property values, increased jobs and revenue in local businesses, environmental benefits, reduction of citizens' medical costs, revitalization of depressed areas, and providing free recreation and transportation opportunities. This path is necessary to connect our city in a multimodal way. If this project is canceled, Tallahassee doesn't get the funds, the state will take them elsewhere. Commissioners and board members, I urge you to think of your citizens that may need to walk, ride, use a wheelchair, or take the bus to get to work on the north side of town. Please think of the citizens who may not be in attendance at this meeting and who are transportation insecure. Please look beyond the loudest citizens and think about whose voice is missing at this meeting. Commuting by bicycle is now a choice for me, but is not that way for everyone. Tallahassee needs to do better to provide equitable transportation for all its citizens.
Good evening, board members. My name is Catherine Ziewitz, and I live at 1609 Redwood Drive. And I'm just going to be very short in my remarks. We're all called to face the future, which, for the sake of a warming planet, means we need to diversify our modes of transportation to become less car dependent. We can still use cars, but we really need to face the future. You've been hearing that from some of the younger folks here. So we need to make it safer for people on foot and bicycle to transit day to day for everyday things. I'm not talking about recreation that's an elite or elite activity reserved for a certain part of the population. I'm talking about getting to work, getting to school, and having a more humane community, which means having alternatives for transit. It's just forward-looking. So revamping the lanes of travel, it is going to provoke change, and change can be disruptive, unfortunately. But I think in the design phase, there will be ways to deal with the issues, deal a little bit with the ingress and egress problems that people are having on those pocket neighborhoods, and move forward. So there's no merit in waiting here. You aren't going to have fewer street cuts. You're just going to rigidify the car-oriented culture that we have, as opposed to moving forward if we wait. So the more quickly we can chart a new course that isn't strictly auto-centric, the better. The pathway's about our whole community and how to strengthen it. So please move forward to the design phase and get this thing going. Clearly, another issue that's come up in this whole discussion is the need to reduce the speed limit and to calm the traffic south of I-10 coming into town. The multi-use path can be part of it. It's a visible signal that we're sharing the road, we're changing things. There's brilliant design ways of calming traffic. So I hope those will be introduced, along with ways to address the visibility concerns and blind spot concerns and safety concerns of the folks that live right there. So please move forward, make me safe, and I can ride to town safely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Lynn Massimore, and followed by Michael Nixon. Lynn here? Oh, you're coming, okay. And third in line will be Doug Bell. No, you didn't, yeah. Sometimes I catch it before the speaker, sometimes not. Thank you, ma'am. Go ahead.
My name's Lynn Massemore. I live at 1800 Jasmine Drive. Thank you for scheduling today at 5:30. Wouldn't have been able to come otherwise, and this is a big deal. A car isn't, and it shouldn't be, a requirement to be a full participant in everything Tallahassee has to offer. Unfortunately, Thomasville Road and a lot of other streets in Tallahassee, and I speak on this.
Will you skip to the microphone, please?
Yes, thank you.
You got it.
And I speak with firsthand experience. Getting around on Thomasville Road and other streets in Tallahassee outside of a car is an act of bravery or stupidity, depending on who you're talking to. For me, I just do it because it's how I get around. I shouldn't also have to come here to ask for the same right to safe travel on public right-of-way that people in cars have, right? I work, I take classes, I pay taxes, I own a house here. I travel, the only difference, I travel to my obligations on a bike or on foot. That's it. This path, it's not going to be perfect. I know that. But it's a path. It's something better than what's there now. It can't be worse than what's there now. Please approve Agenda Item 6 and don't stop there. The root cause of so many issues in Tallahassee, and a lot of the opposition tonight, it's not a bike path. It's too many cars. Okay? Agenda Item 6 is a drop in the bucket towards, getting people out of cars, getting people to multimodal, but we need to start somewhere, and this is the place to start. So please approve, move it to design phase. We can't be stuck at the status quo. We do too much staying at the status quo. So let's move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Go right ahead, sir.
Oh, thanks. Good evening. My name is Michael Nixon. I live at 1510 Valley Road. I don't have a car by choice, so I commute to work every day by bicycle, and I use 2 miles of the Thomasville Road corridor right there. It's pretty sketchy to say the least. If you don't know what that means, it's scary, definitely, in the morning and the afternoon for sure. There's a lot of comments about the road being a highway, and I think Steve said it before me, that that's one of the bigger issues for sure. But I'd like to see you guys move forward with this project, please. Thank you very much.
Following Mr. Bell will be, I believe, Allison Justice. I hope I got that close. Go ahead, sir.
Madam Chair, my name is Doug Bell. I live at 216 Hawk Meadow Drive in Tallahassee. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm here on behalf of the Tallahassee Mountain Bike Association. I'm a member of the board, and we formally support moving forward to the next step. And so many people have made terrific points here. I'm not going to reiterate all those wonderful points. I do want to say, though, it's interesting that I don't know that anybody's here, but I know that the Gulf Winds Track Club has sent you all emails and formally supports this. So they're the pedestrians, the runners. You've got the Capital City cyclists who made a wonderful presentation earlier, Tallahassee Mountain Bike Association. We're folks, in addition to the local residents who live right in the neighborhoods that are going to use this. We think it's important from a safety perspective. And we're the ones, I guess, who are going to die if we're hit, but it's the folks who are in the cars that are using safety as their issue of why this isn't working. So you've got the cars on one side saying it's not safe, when the pedestrians, who are the ones who are really going to be hurt, are saying we need this path for safety. So I urge you all to look at it from that perspective. And young Chloe said it so well. It's time for Tallahassee to move to the future. She's our future. I would say really the present. We need to get with the program. So really appreciate the staff, great job, and all of you, and urge your support for this. Thank you.
Allison Justice? Gotcha. And followed by Eric West.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. My name is Allison Justice. I'll start by saying I would like to support the multi-use path. I want to thank the board for allowing us to engage in these decisions. It's really important for the public to have a voice. I recently became a member of the TMBA. I moved here about a month ago. The number 2 reason why I moved here was because of the mountain bike trails and the biking in this area. The first reason was for a new job, which does not pay more. So number 2 is actually the initial reason why I'm actually here. I won't bore you anymore, but I was previously at a trauma center. I worked as a PA there in the emergency department. And bike traumas are real, and they're really deadly. And I did not bike in Daytona Beach, where I came from, because I knew I'd end up dead. And one thing about this community is they value biking, and I'm just so impressed of the opportunities that are available for bikers, but I also think that Tallahassee could do better. But of course, I'm only a month old here, right? So overall, I support the multi-use path, and I thank you for your time today.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. West, followed by John Swole.
My name is Eric West. I'm at 225 Parkbrook Circle. Basically, a lot of people have mentioned that this is a safety issue. Also, the city has made commitments to cyclists in the form of League of American Bicyclists, as well as trying to become a bronze level ride destination from the International Mountain Bike Association. This path is a good step towards becoming more bike friendly and allowing more cyclists to be able to use the trails that go out through the city of Tallahassee. Additionally, the Cascades Fitness Path has had 100,000 people on it, and there are no reported collisions. And we have the St. Mark's bicycle path that people do go by the thousands every year also, and it's not like it's open season on pedestrians there. So I support the path, and thank you.
Sure. And our next speaker after John will be Finn Van Oss.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon. John Sewell, 4114 Faulkner Lane, Tallahassee. I'm here to voice my strong support for moving forward with this project. I think that, I've heard a lot of comments here tonight about safety. I think it's very interesting, some of the angles on that. The state of Florida has its Florida Transportation Plan, which is the statewide plan for transportation for the entire state, and the #1 goal is safety, above economic vitality, above all of those other important things to the state. The state of Florida has official modes of transportation, transit, car, ports, seaports, airports. One of those is bicycles. And I think it's very interesting, some of the comments that we've heard here tonight talk about, oh, we're good with cars and we're good with the pedestrians, but we don't want to provide a facility for bicycles. And I just don't think that's right. I think that the charge of the CRTPA is to provide a multimodal transportation system consistent with its own goals and its guiding principles. And before I retired last May, I built, planned, designed, and built bike trails all over the United States. A couple of them right here in this area, Ocklackney Bay Trail and Coastal Trail. And many of those projects, most of those projects, had a lot of the same concerns that you're hearing here tonight. And in a lot of those cases, after the trail is built, some of those same people came back and said, this is a wonderful thing. We were wrong. And our families use this and we enjoy this facility. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of wrong assumptions, things taken out of context that get people in an uproar about these things. But when it really gets down to it, it's a transportation facility for the mode of bicycles, pedestrians, and other users that the consultant had mentioned here tonight. And I also want to talk a little bit about, we talk about safety and we talk about all these statistics, and we talk about the technical justification for this project. Dave Baton, Steve Reeker, and Chet Smith were all tragically killed on roadways in this area that did not have separated facilities. They were pillars of the community, they were pillars of state government, and they were friends of mine. And I know it's a hard thing to do. What we're doing here tonight is we're hearing from all of the different angles here. But the thing that I think people need to understand is that this is about people. You heard the young woman talk. It's about the future. And that's what we're trying to do here today.
Thank you.
I ask you support this and move forward with design.
Thank you. All right. Finn Van Oss, followed by Bree Van Oss.
Hello, my name is Finley Van Oss, and I'm 10 years old, and I live at 2539 Noble Drive. I think the multi-use path will be a great resource for walkers and bikers. Me and my cousin like to bike around town, and this multi-use path will be a great option for safer commuting. I think we need to know that bikers and walkers need safer options for getting around town. Thank you for considering my vote. I hope you vote for the multi-use bike path.
We have Bree Van Oss, followed by Luca Van Oss.
My name is Bree Van Oss. I live at 2539 Noble Drive. In addition to being the father of 2 avid cyclists, I also am the team director and head coach of the Tallahassee Thunder, a local youth mountain biking program. We ride with, this year we have 29 kids on our team, young student athletes. We ride in a large group. We teach them about sharing the trail and slowing down. One thing that we don't do is use bike lanes on busy roads, because although we have the ability to keep the kids under control for the most part, there's always that fear that they're going to get squirrely or that a car is going to veer in, and that creates a lot of stress on the coaches. So we end up using sidewalks and riding single file. So in addition to all of the things that other people have shared in support for this project, the separation from the road of the cyclist is a huge concern for those riding with young children.
And for the third Van Oss, Luca, if you'll give me just 1 second, followed by Bob Hightower. Go right ahead, Luca.
All right. Hello, my name is Luca Van Oss. I live at 2539 Noble Drive. I'm in favor of the bike path because I ride my bike to school every single day. I go to school at School of Arts and Sciences, so I'm biking up and down Thomasville Road every single day. This multi-use path would be a huge asset, not only going to school, but also going to Lofty Pursuits, the local ice cream store. Thank you.
I suppose that's a good point. Okay, Mr. Hightower will be followed by David Saint, Dr. Saint.
Thank you. I'm Bob Hightower, 5413 DeForest Ferry Road. Initially, I want to thank all of the representatives from various governments for taking the time to listen to the many good arguments for and against and so forth. 30 years ago, I sat here as Curtis Richardson, Representative Richardson does, or Commissioner Richardson does, on the City Commission. Several points. I've lived on the west side of Thomasville Road, and I've also lived on Peacefield Place. Peacefield does have a very difficult time coming out and making a left-hand turn on Thomasville Road. That's true now. It's going to be true in the future. That is a factor that you need to take into consideration. I am in support of staff's recommendation, very clearly. In living on the west side of Thomasville Road, many times my children would be riding along on the sidewalks, not on the bike paths. I avoid the bike paths on Thomasville Road and any other major highway. We have traffic going down Thomasville Road, like it or not, at the speeds that are really should be reserved to limited access highways. That's one thing that needs to change. Decisions were made years ago to not have limited access highways, for the most part, in the Tallahassee area. So we don't have limited access highway going from downtown north to north past Woodgate to Bradfordville. We don't have that. We have Thomasville Road. The expectations are that I should be able to drive 45, 55 miles an hour along Thomasville Road. That's an unrealistic expectation when you're trying to get out of Peaceville. Very, very unrealistic expectation. The hills of Tallahassee also do hurt because they block the vision when you're coming out of Peacefield. It's not going to get any better unless we do reduce the speed on Thomasville Road. Now, all of that being said, I very much support staff's recommendation. I very much support it because we're going to have people, as has been indicated, people are going to ride their bikes on the sidewalk along Thomasville Road. They're going to be walkers, they're going to be scooters. You know, it doesn't make sense to push the bicycles into the bike lane in Thomasville Road. You know, I would not want to ride a bike in Thomasville Road's bike lane. I could go on, but I'll leave it at that, and I hope that you support staff recommendation. There are very good arguments for it and very good arguments against it, so it is a tough decision. I certainly support it, and I will be out there riding on it as soon as it's built. Thank you.
Commissioner, that was my fault. We always welcome our former colleagues, so thank you for being here. And as Dr. Saint joins us, we only have one more in person, Scott Dudley, who's going to wave in support, and we have 2 virtual. So, sir, you can bring us to a close at the in-person.
Great. David Saint, 8025 Lantern Light Road. I just have 2 quick points to make, and one of them is that you've heard lots of cyclists tonight, and the reason that this is so critical is we have great bike paths south of town. You can ride for miles. We have great neighborhoods north of town, but it is really unsafe and impossible to get to. I have to get in the car with my bicycle to get south of town to ride, and that's really not the way it should be. The other thing is we're not really here to discuss individual items about this. We're here to decide, should we go forward? And the real question is what kind of town do we want to live in going forward? And I would make the plea that that's how you make your decision, is that you decide what kind of city do we want. Do we want a city that we can ride our bikes in, or do we want a city that really the only way to get from the north side to the south side is to get in your car?
I did not have a speaker card, but if you'll come on up. For Eric Draper, and if you'll just fill out a speaker card afterwards, just in case it got lost in the shuffle.
Thank you very much. I think my speaker card did get turned in. I distinctly wrote it. Anyways, thank you very much for giving me a chance to speak here today. I want to thank you so much for everything that you're doing and sitting here and listening to all these comments. There certainly are strong opinions on both sides. I think that I speak in favor, of course, of the recommendation moving to the design phase. I want to put that in context. And again, thanking you so much. I wanted to thank particularly Curtis Richardson, Commissioner Richardson. Last time I saw you, we were cutting a ribbon on a multi-use trail. I don't know if you remember that from the Capital Sea Trail. And thank you very much for that support. I mean, I think that trail is a demonstration of the popular support and the actual use when that trail was first developed. Not very many people use it. Now it's a really, really important connector for the students and people living on the south side. It's all about connection. The reason I brought that up is because I know there's a lot of retired people here, a lot of very influential retired people here. I just retired from being the director of the Florida Park Service. So that gave me the opportunity to manage the state's Greenways and Trails program. And I can tell you from that experience, going around cutting ribbons all over the state of Florida, that multi-use trails are extremely popular in other places, and they're great assets for cities. In fact, many cities are competing right now to be designated trail towns. And you just can't believe the local government officials that turn out and the merchants that put little stickers in their windows that say, you know, we're a trail town, Winter Haven, Dunedin, Titusville. These are great places, and the idea of being trail towns connected to trails attracts people. What I heard tonight is a lot of agreement, actually. I think that we're in agreement on a number of things. I'm clearly a cyclist, so I think we're in agreement with this thing, which Thomasville Road is a horribly dangerous place. The speed has actually driven cyclists like me off the road. I used to ride in the bike lane, and can't do that anymore. It's dangerous. That point was made. I think that we all agree that turning into those neighborhoods is in fact a risky proposition. Turning into anything, left turns anywhere on Thomasville Road is a risky proposition. And I think that we could agree that there's current use of the sidewalk and the trail on the other side, on the east side and west side. We can agree there's a lot of use of that. Now, some people say, oh, there's not much use, but in fact, there is quite considerable use. We can see that some of the use is becoming unfortunate, such as e-bikes. And I apologize for anyone that's been harassed by an e-bike. While I was Parks Director, I put a speed limit on our trails for e-bikes. That needs to be done. We need to control that particular group. But that moving this to the design phase gives us the opportunity to take the concerns that people have expressed and work them through in the design stage. Now, one of my friends said, oh, no, that, once it's a design stage, it's done. It's not done. There's no money that's being invested in capital improvements once it's the design stage. But that gives us the opportunity to make sure that we avoid all the trees. Former president of the National Audubon Society, former vice president of the National Audubon Society, gives us a chance to avoid all the trees or most of the trees and to actually work through the impediments and figure out a way to make it safe. I will wrap up with saying this. We have a lot of influential people in the room who have negotiated some really incredible deals. When I look at some of the people that are in here, you guys know how to work things out. There's got to be an answer other than no. So let's move to the design stage, get reasonable people to sit down on the things we agree about, creating a safer Thomasville Road. We can make this happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So far we have had 38 speakers. That was a lot, so missing one card may not be that surprising. But as we shift to our 2 virtual speakers, I will just make the last call. If you wanted to speak and didn't have a chance or your card got lost, you can come up and sign a card at the back table. Otherwise, these will be our last 2 speakers. Thank you. And with that, we're ready. Joanne Sutherland will be our first speaker. We have Janet White.
She appears to be off.
Okay, well, since we see Johnette, let's reverse this and we'll go with Johnette Sawyer first, and we'll see if we can get Ms. Sutherland on. You're on mute, Johnette?
Now can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Go right ahead.
Okay. I'm Johnette Sawyer, and I live at 2012 Winthrop Way. It's been interesting tonight listening to all the comments and being the last speaker and having the perspective of both sides. And I think both sides have good arguments and reasons for wanting what they want. But as a resident of this area of town now for 38 years, I can't get past the fact that there are certain problems that I am very concerned cannot be mitigated in the design phase. The first one is the amount of traffic on Thomasville Road. Right now, somewhere around 35,000 cars a day, and as many people have commented, easily exceeding the 45-mile-per-hour speed limit. When I look to the future and you see all the growth on the north side of town, that is only going to increase over time and create more issues. The other thing that people have mentioned are the hills that I'm most aware of that limit visibility, as well as the dozens of entries and exits that do make it very difficult for people. I don't think it's so much that the old people are against the future, and I also don't think that older people should feel okay because we're in a car and the person who's going to get hurt is the pedestrian or the cyclist, because no one wants to hurt anyone. And I sympathize with all the people on the board trying to make a decision, because I do think safety is imperative, and that should be the first thing you think about for the citizens of Tallahassee and whether this works or not. My concern about the 3 issues is whether or not these can be mitigated in the design phase. So with that in mind, I guess that's all I really have to say tonight, except for the fact that about the proposed cost of $8 to $9 million, which we know given the inflation period we're in, that is only going to get higher. I do have a concern about whether the money is being spent equitably throughout Tallahassee. I understand there are a number of projects at number 1. The other day I was driving down Paul Russell Road, and they could certainly use good sidewalks there. So I would just ask that you give serious consideration to safety and that you give serious consideration to equity. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay, and our last speaker will be Joanne Sutherland. I believe you're back with us.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am. If you can state your name and address, and you've got 3 minutes.
Joanna Sutherland. I live at 1117 Sandhurst Drive.
Thank you.
I'm an avid cyclist. I'm an older cyclist. I have ridden not only in Tallahassee, but all over the world. I've seen how other cities, not only in the United States, but internationally, have weaved in multi-use trails to make the communities accessible to all people, young and old. And I really think that we are, as a community, smart enough to figure this out and make it easy to get from Wakulla to Havana. And that's all I have to say. I hope that you will vote for going forward with this. I think the younger people have a really good point that we need to rethink our future and how we move around and how we should concern ourselves with the future environment. And I would like this to be there for when my grandkids are 15 years old. So thank you very much for your time and for everybody's really hard work.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. That rounds out 40 speakers for tonight. For the board, we all know that's a good crowd for a big issue like this. Thank you all for your time, your comments, and we'll move straight into commissioner discussion. I already see Commissioner Minor with his card up, and just as a reminder, this will be a good signal for me if you can put your cards up if you'd like to speak, and I'll take them in order that I see them. Go right ahead, Commissioner Minor.
Great, thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, I'd like to thank all the people who've engaged with us on this project on both sides, on multiple sides, actually. I'd also like to thank the CRTPA staff and the Kinley Horn team. They've done a very good job drafting the feasibility study, the safety review, which I think some of you have seen, and the other documentation. They also worked hard to host the public meetings and to compile the citizen feedback. The interest in this has been sky high, and today we decide whether or not this project will proceed to the design phase. So this is a really big day. I don't know how things are going to go, but I'm wearing my lucky socks. Whatever that means. These days, it really seems like every issue is highly polarized, and this project is no different. We're hearing from intelligent people who have spent a lot of time conducting their research, but yet they have diametrically opposed conclusions about safety and need. So this means that no matter what we do today, we're going to make some people unhappy. Let me say that that is not our intention. I believe every voting member here on the CRTPA is trying to make the best decision that they can with the information that we have at this point. I'm going to recommend that we take a different approach on this project. Initially, I was a supporter of the multi-use path here. I have to admit, I was excited about it. We need greater connectivity between Midtown and the Market District and all the points in between. People are asking for sustainable, healthier transportation alternatives, and we need them. When Chloe says multi-use paths are the future, I agree with her. We want Tallahassee to be a multimodal city, but multi-use paths aren't suitable for every corridor. And I don't believe Thomasville Road, with its 30,000 vehicles per day and its 40-plus access points, is a safe option. I drive on Thomasville Road 2 or 3 times a day, and I regularly use a few of the 40-plus access points. It seems that most residents in the neighborhoods near Thomasville Road would agree with me. My office has focused largely on reaching out to the neighborhoods and businesses that live along or near Thomasville Road, along the route. And this is not scientific, but it seems to me there's a clear majority of the people I've reached out to and heard back from that are against this path. 58% is against, 35% is for, and 7% are kind of in between. Again, this is not a scientific breakdown, but it gives me a sense, when it comes to making my decision, it gives me a sense that the people, again, that live in these neighborhoods, that work in these businesses, by and large, a majority of them, would rather not have this path to proceed. So when making my decision, I need to take into account the people that I work for, and these are the people who live near and along Thomasville Road. Now, here's what I'm proposing and why. It's not a perfect solution, but perhaps it's a workable one. Let me first talk about cyclists. Cyclists currently have a north-south bike route that runs east of Thomasville Road. And Howard, could you bring up the route? Yeah. This is the All Saints to Maclay Gardens route. Now, I know not every cyclist is going to like this argument, but it's not the same as a multi-use path. It's only for cyclists. It uses the existing streets, and it's longer than the multi-use path that we're currently considering. There's no signage, and there's no easy access, of course, to points on the eastern side of Thomasville Road. But this is a north-south route for bicyclists. And it might be safer than the multi-use path. Now, let me talk about the needs of pedestrians, especially since they can't walk along this bike route. It's streets. Howard, if you can show me the sidewalk photos. On Saturday, I walked the entire length of the proposed route. I wanted to see the entire route in its entirety. And if you look at this, you've probably seen pictures of this in the agenda materials compiled by CRTPA and Kimley Horn, but these are some photos of the condition of the sidewalks that are on the east side of Thomasville, between Piedmont, all the way going through Woodgate, all the way down to Armitage and Gardenia Drive. So when people say that the current conditions are not safe, you believe them. And this is one aspect of safety, right? This is actually walking or biking on the sidewalk is not safe. So here's something I propose. And Howard, if you can show us the last image. All right, so what I'm thinking of is not going forward with the proposed multi-use path, but trying to strike some type of solution which increases connectivity for pedestrians, knowing that we've got that bike path that goes north and south. What this would do would take 3 sections of sidewalks along the west side of Thomasville Road and renovate them, upgrade them so that they're usable. The first section would be from Piedmont Drive to Woodgate Way. It's about 0.6 miles. It cost about $140,000. The middle section, which is already defined as a recommended improvement in the feasibility study, is from Woodgate Way to Waverly Road. That's 0.6 miles. That's $152,000 to upgrade those sidewalks. And then lastly, there's a smaller segment from Waverly Road to Gardenia Drive on the west side of Thomasville. That's 0.2 miles. It cost about $47,000. Now, the CRTPA has not seen these cost figures, and I'm not a traffic engineer, so don't hold me to these numbers, but I'm using the FDOT, the Florida Department of Transportation, long-range estimates on sidewalk cost per mile. So they're probably in the ballpark. All these segments, the renovation, upgrading of the Thomasville Road sidewalk on the west side would cost a total of about $339,000. That's as little as 5.5% of the entire cost for the multi-use path project. And if we were to go this route instead, it would save us $5.8 million, as much as $5.8 million that we could use for other projects here in the CRTPA region. So my motion is to not proceed to the design phase for the multi-use path. I know it's been a tough decision, and I've spent an incredible amount of time on this over the last several months. And I know there will be some people that are unhappy. But my motion is not to proceed to design, but instead request respectfully to FDOT to prioritize the renovation and upgrading of these sidewalk segments west of Thomasville Road. Now, each one of the CRTPA members, I mean, you all have your own vote, and I know you've gone through your decision-making process on this. Maybe you've made a decision already. But respectfully, I ask, as the county commissioner that represents this area, I'd ask you to consider this and here for any questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Very good. Second.
Just one second, Commissioner Matlow. Thank you, Commissioner Minor. I didn't hear a second.
Second.
We've got a second from Commissioner Maddox. Commissioner Matlow, if you would for just a second, I'd like to ask important clarification. This project, Greg, was ranked in our plan as a multi-use trail, we would need to go back through a process to ask for sidewalk funding, or, I mean, there's additional steps in that process should this motion pass. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I
Really,
just want to be clear for everybody, yeah.
yeah, typically what we would do in the case of the sidewalks, as you all recall, we have priority lists for different types of projects. How it's defined here on the third slide is not really on that priority list, so we'd have to get some clarification on that. I'm not sure what we would do or how we would approach the what's listed here as the All Saints to Maclay Gardens route. That appears to be part of what we looked at as part of our neighborhood network, and I didn't go back and compare. But keep in mind, when we did the bike ped master plan, we looked at a series of multi-use paths throughout the community, and then we're using things like this to connect to that multi-use path network. So this is a lot different than what the intent we went forward with in the bike ped master plan. If that makes sense. So,
Understood.
I don't know that part of the motion calls for us putting improvements on these roadways. When we did that in the bike ped master plan, again, part of the neighborhood network, that was more a series of sharrows and things like that on the lower volume, lower speed roadways. I would have concerns and again, I'm just kind of looking at this as we go. This traverse is probably the most or second most heavily traveled portion of Capitol Circle around the interstate. So that could pose some challenges. But yeah, we need to get some direction from you all if this moves forward.
Again, Commissioner Matlow, and I'll get to Commissioner Maddox next. Commissioner Matlow, I just wanted us to make sure we understood the process again, should the motion move forward. Commissioner Matlow and then Commissioner Maddox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just for clarification, the motion is to not move forward with the design, but then to explore the sidewalk improvements on West Tennessee? Or
Madam Chair.
On Thomasville Road?
Yes, Commissioner Matlow, it would be basically to not proceed with the design phase, and then I spoke with Executive Director Slay on this about basically working with FDOT to prioritize the renovation and upgrading of those sidewalks.
Okay, thank you. I'll support the motion on the table. I think if we don't move forward with the design phase today, I don't think that is shutting the door on how we really commute to the north and connect with Midtown. But I do, when I look at, and it also doesn't mean we're not supporting expanded bike infrastructure in our city. We adopted the bike and pedestrian master plan, and we have several tier 1 projects that would be in queue that could be looked to next. And when I look at the next in line bike paths, for me personally, I would like to see us move forward with different projects first. So when we look at MLK, Brevard to West Tennessee, when we look at Jackson Bluff from Capitol Circle to Lake Bradford, Woodward, Alabama Street to Tennessee Street, there's a long list of projects that we can focus on and we can move forward with first. When in the city of Tallahassee, we have a list of about $200 million in sidewalk projects, neighborhoods that don't have any sidewalks at all. My neighborhood's included. We're about 175 on the list, so that means that project's coming 20 to 30 years from now. So when I look at overall and I look at the bike master plan, I mean, this is decades and decades and decades of investment. And for me, it's where do we start and where do we go next? So when I look at the Thomasville Road project as proposed, I heard a lot of good suggestions from public speakers. Let's slow down traffic. Let's make this corridor actually safe. And I know those types of changes to Thomasville Road are not coming in the design phase of just a multi-use trail. What Thomasville Road needs to me is a reimagining of the entire corridor. How are we going to get, with all the new development coming to the northeast, especially with the expansion into Welaunee, we're now guaranteeing the next 20 years of growth in our community is going to come from the northeast. So I look at our main corridor out there, and while we're kind of on a side project of doing the multi-use trail, we're not addressing the future of transit. We're not looking at bus rapid transit lines. We're not looking at autonomous vehicle lines. I think we're boxing ourselves in if we move forward with this project and not doing it holistically to slow traffic down, to make it more safe for pedestrians. So I think where we are right now, if we can go to a different bike project like Jackson Bluff and take this back to the drawing board and try to really answer those questions of how we're actually going to move people forward thinking, because I do understand in the current condition, if you use that route, a multi-use trail is safer, but I also look at the induced demand that we're going to create if we build that trail. And when we look at the comparables, there are more deaths per road mile on the comparables than there are now. And that may be because of the number of people using it, I don't know, but I do know when we talk about designing for Vision Zero, it doesn't make sense to move forward with something that appears less safe. So I like the motion on the table, and I hope we'll move forward with the next rink project on the Tier 1 list. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Maddox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I almost daily run from Eastfield Place to Midtown and back. It's about a 4.5, almost 5 mile run. And I pull out of Peaceville on a regular basis, and I can speak to the safety issue that it can be trying to make that left. Commissioner Minor, I want to thank you for how hard you worked on this. This took a lot of effort to come up with what you came up with, and to walk the whole path itself. I didn't take you much of a walker, but that had to take a lot of effort as well. So the effort that you put into this is not lost on me, and I appreciate it. Even the numbers that you put here and the ideas that you came up with. As I listened, a couple things came to mind. I'm always the guy who wants to meet in the middle. Got some of the most sophisticated people that I've heard speak in a long time speak on both sides of this, from planners on respective issues to people who allocated money. I mean, you guys could probably do this yourselves. And you got a surgeon. I mean, you could probably do this thing yourself. One thought I had was that, before we move forward with anything, put these respective sides in the room, have a conversation and see if they can come to some kind of agreement on what works. And I don't know how much of that was done in the phases in the feasibility study, but you guys could probably tell me. But I feel like if you put all these people in a room and said, listen, work out your differences, give us something that works, they could probably come back with something that may not give everybody what they want, but give a little here, give a little there, meet in the middle, and it all works. And then there was the thought that Commissioner Matlow had of, there's a lot of need in our community for these kind of bike paths and multimodal paths. And the places that you mentioned, you talk about Alabama Street and Brevard and all those places, that kind of infrastructure in can be changing to the area. So I'm looking forward to, even if these sidewalks don't work out, us being able to elevate the next #1 project to be worked on and completed and sit through the different respective phases and infrastructure be put in. But Mr. Polk, I had a question about that. If we decide not to go through a design phase, but then want to elevate or look at some of those other #1s that we have, how will that affect the funding for those? Could we look at allocating funding towards those or speeding those up, or how would you guys see that?
Yes, it's always up to this body to determine the priorities you like to see your funding spent. The purpose of feasibility studies is determine, does this area want this type of project? I will say the only thing the department would have concerns about is, you then would potentially have to look at another feasibility study at these other locations. Right. And we highly encourage, the expedition of the funds, the expenditure of the funds. So we don't want to drag this out too long. But again, we would not necessarily want to push these funds in any given direction. We want this body to have the opportunity to place the funds on the appropriate corridor.
That's awesome. So those of us who have been to the NPOAC Institute know that these kind of conversations or these kind of decisions are decisions that we're left to make. We are left to make in our community these kind of decisions about where these roadways and bike paths go. FDOT, as Brian said, will not force these things on us. They will listen to the direction that they receive from us about where these things want to go. But I'm like you, Brian, Mr. Polk, I don't want to waste time either. These improvements that we're talking about, Mr. Polk, don't speak to the funds that we're talking about as far as the multimodal path. Is that correct? This would be a whole separate request?
No. What other fundings were you?
This.
This would basically come from the same pot of funds, the same area. You could look at other funding opportunities. We do have programs that look at sidewalk improvements that this body does have the opportunity to apply for. The Transportation Alternatives Program, in addition to your urban dollars that likely we would be looking for on these.
Commissioner Matlow, since you brought it up, was there a particular roadway, particular path that you were thinking more than the other that we can start moving on, or would you want staff to bring back to the evaluation? What I'm trying to get here, Commissioner Minor, is if by the number here that you're saying there's so much more money that we have left to spend, I don't want to use this opportunity to just look at this. I want to get staff moving on whatever the next priority is and start moving in that direction too, because these, I mean, as Commissioner Matlow said, there's a lot of other need in our community that we could move forward on. So if we're going to move in this direction of not continuing, then let's go ahead and start working on the next one. So Commissioner Matlow, was there a particular one in particular that you were thinking of?
The next in line on the chart from the ranking I had was MLK from Brevard to Tennessee.
Okay.
The second was Jackson Bluff from Capitol Circle Southwest to Lake Bradford.
Okay.
And then the third was Woodward from Alabama Street to Tennessee Street. And any of those three would be.
Mr. Slade, can you guide me through?
I'm curious, are you looking at the list that's within the bike ped master plan that's the first tier?
Yes, the tier one.
And I remember that's generally, all of those projects are in a single tier. We use our annual priorities to actually pick the ones that we move forward. And right now, first on that list, I'm sorry, I'm going to take this off. We had the Monticello Bike Trail Extension. The Thomasville Road path was number 2. Number 3 is the Bloxham Cutoff Road Trail, and then 4 is Oak Ridge Road, and the 5th one was Appalachia Parkway Trail Connector. So remember, we take those in the master plan and then prioritize some of those on an annual basis. The one, just off the top of my head, some of the issues that we know we have with Jackson Bluff is lack of right-of-way. So more than likely, a multi-use path along a project like that would have to come along with the road reconstruction, similar to what we're seeing, or we're talking about, Blueprint's talking about on Spring Hill Road. Some of those projects on that list need to be part of a total road rebuild.
What about Oak Ridge?
Oak Ridge is one we actually identified for a feasibility study in the UPWP. So we're going to move that one here shortly.
Commissioner Minor, along with the evaluation of these sidewalks that you talked about, would you be willing to add to your motion that staff also evaluate a feasibility study for Oak Ridge, for the Oak Ridge bike path? Yes, sir.
We're actually already doing. We're budgeted to do that here in the next couple of months.
Oh, great. So those monies could be shifted, Brian, Ms. Polk. These monies could be shifted to that project.
If I can jump in here, Commissioner Maddox, Greg said we already have that money budgeted, so it doesn't need to be shifted. And I understand the source of your question here, but I'm just going to say that we are mixing a lot of different issues. We do have new members, but I'm a little uncomfortable with getting
I tell you what, I am working in the moment, and that's not good. So
we can.
What I want to do is, if we're going to move forward in this way, then I want to bring back something to show us what we're looking at, so we can start evaluating and move forward. I don't want to waste time, as Brian said. I want the allocation to happen swiftly.
Yes. I'll just ask Greg if we could pull up our current bike ped annual priority list, so you can see what's on that list.
I still don't think. I think Commissioner Dozier, I think you're right. If we're going to move in this direction, I don't think it's good that we necessarily make it in the moment. I think to bring back and evaluate and then make a decision, and knowing actually what we can do or what the possibilities are with these funds if we're going to move in a different direction. I think that's probably the better way to go about it. I got a little bit ahead of myself because I heard the urgency in Mr. Polk's voice, and that, okay, we don't want to just sit around with it. But I think we could probably bring back an agenda item at the next meeting and have a conversation. It's not us sitting around. I mean, you would give us that kind of time to reevaluate things, correct, Ms. Polk?
Yes, we just, more to the point of not setting things back another 12 months, another 18 months, things of that nature.
So Commissioner Meyer, what about you just ask for an agenda item to come back, or would you add to your motion for an agenda item to come back to evaluate the other paths and multimodal use trailways?
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Maddox, yes, I would. And you were the seconder of the motion, so.
Yes, I'll take that.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry about the length of my comments.
Real quick clarification, I just make sure everybody's on the same page. The construction costs have not been budgeted, so we do not have that money available as of yet.
Understood.
Okay.
Well, all that stuff, can you explain all of that when you come back in the agenda item, because this is all happening on the fly.
Okay, if I could just real quick, and can we blow that up some? This is actually our fiscal year 23-27 bike ped priority list. And as Commissioner Matlow, the list that you were referring to, this is basically a shortened version of that with projects that we feel that we can move forward sooner than later. One of the things we do on practically just about all of these, the first step is a feasibility study, because just like with Thomasville Road, we didn't know if we had adequate right-of-way. We didn't know if there were issues out there. So pretty much all of these, at least initially, would need to go through some type of feasibility study. These were the ones that we felt primarily we could move forward because we believe there's adequate right-of-way there. But the things like Jackson Bluff and some of those that you listed off, again, those are different types of projects that are going to require they're going to be required to be parts of other larger reconstruction projects, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm done. Thank you.
All right, where are we? We've got Commissioner Williams-Cox, and then I'll come to you, Commissioner Barfield.
Trying to figure out where we're at.
We've got the motion on the table. The agenda item, bringing back the priorities list, was accepted as a amendment, correct?
Yes.
And we're going on to speakers. Good? Okay. Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to raise up to say to Commissioner Mann, I can appreciate the work that went into this, but I have a sense of unreadiness, being this is the first time I'm seeing this. I came prepared to make a decision based on what I had been presented and what I've been talking about for months now and meeting with people for a very long time. I can appreciate the emotion that has gotten involved in this. But the purpose of a feasibility study, if someone could correct me, is to determine whether a project is feasible to take it to the next phase. And that question, I believe, has been answered, that it is feasible. It's not a matter of many other factors, but as we go along, we will get to those things, and there'll be more opportunity for input along the way. We have spent money, good money and time, on a feasibility study, and now we're looking like we want to put it on the shelf and come up with something that I'm not ready to vote on. And in doing so, we're beginning to move sidewalk projects that I'm not comfortable with, because I don't want Thomasville Road sidewalks to move ahead of sidewalks we need on the south side, since we're saying we want to spend this money in places where it's needed, and we want equity. We have spent good money on a feasibility study. The merits of that feasibility study says that moving forward is feasible. And to be honest with you, I'm ready to move forward. We can't keep coming back and kicking the can down the road and coming back dealing with that same can over and over again, because we'll never move. We either need to vote it up or down and keep moving so that we can get to these other projects, because there's a list this long that are priority ones. Thomasville Road just happened to be at the top, but you can move it to number 3. It's still going to be priority 1. There's a whole list of things. Am I right, Greg? But based on the list I've seen, there are a number of priority ones based on criteria, tier 1. So I'm ready to move one way or the other, and let's move forward in our community. And let's stop doing feasibility studies, paying money to consultants to do feasibility studies and then don't use them. So that's kind of where I am. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I've got Commissioner Richardson in the queue. Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had been reluctant to speak, but you know, we found ourselves in a recent city commission meeting in a very similar situation where we were trying to establish policy on the fly. And for as long as I've been in public office, that is something I've tried to avoid at all costs. Because when you do that, it's usually not a very good outcome. And Commissioner Minor, I appreciate what you've done, but you've done it. You did it without bringing us along with you, as this feasibility study has done. You said, you know, you reached out to people in the neighborhoods. That was very limited. That was nowhere near the kind of public input that staff has reached out to and gotten, and even what we've seen here tonight. And so I'm ready to move forward. I think the feasibility study has told us that this project is feasible. We've had people that I've known for years and highly respect have said they feel like it's a project that this community needs, that we need to support. Now, I don't want to get into this north side, south side thing. We don't need to go there. And I hope nobody would. Because I can tell you the reason I ran for the city commission as a resident of the south side of town was to address those kinds of issues. So nobody's going to sit here and tell me that they're going to advocate more for the south side of town than Curtis Richardson. Because I've been doing that for almost 24 years now, wherever I have served in this community. And so I think we need to move forward. I think that Commissioner Maddox, as you said, if we move forward to the design phase, we can get those experts in the room together. And as we design this project, those kinds of issues can be addressed. And so I am ready to move forward. I'm almost tempted to make a substitute motion, but I'll let us go forward with this motion as it's been stated. But I'm ready to move forward with the recommendation of staff.
Thank you. I see your card up, Commissioner Minor. If do you want to clarify something? I've got a couple of questions on your motion, but I was waiting for everyone to be.
Sure. If you don't mind, let me clarify, respond to Commissioner Richardson real quickly. I'll be brief. Commissioner Richardson, thank you very much. I appreciate your comments. There is a large Appendix B of citizen feedback that's been collected by Kimberly Horn and by CRTPA staff with all the pop-ups that they had, the public meetings, the emails, the surveys. So we have all of that. And I think we've all had a chance to take a look at that. What I wanted to do was represent my constituents in my district and focus on them. I've seen this. I've seen what's been provided by CRTPA and Kimberly Horn. I wanted to focus on my residents, the folks who had contacted me about this project. So that's why I focused on that, knowing that I will balance that with what has been provided to us by CRTPA. You talked about how, you know, I haven't brought this to you before. I can't collaborate with you outside of a public meeting, as you know. You know, the CRTPA meetings that are publicly noticed are opportunity for us to do that. What I did is I put together an alternative as best I could, using feedback and observations from people that I've been talking with in my neighborhoods, you know, in the businesses that live there. So I'm doing exactly everything appropriately. I should not have, it would be illegal for me to send this to you before this meeting today. So I'm bringing it to you now because I want to bring this up to the fore and have us have a discussion about it. So that's the reason behind what I did. This is one option. This is what I think is a good, it's not perfect, but it's a reasonable alternative to what we have now. And the concerns I've heard from the people that live on and near Thomasville Road and drive on it every single day or bike on it or walk, I mean, the concerns I've heard from those neighbors that live at the site along the route the majority of those folks are very concerned about the safety. And as someone who uses that road very frequently, 2 or 3 times a day, I agree with them. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm not seeing anyone else in the queue to speak, so I'm going to make a few comments here, and then if anyone else wants to jump in the conversation, please do. I think this came out in a lot of the speakers. A couple of folks at the end really highlighted this. Everybody mentioned safety. No matter what you think about this road, absolutely everybody mentioned safety. And I am not in your district, obviously, Commissioner Minor, but I do live within the range of where the postcards were sent. And so I got your letter. I got the postcards. I got all of this. So I am walking in these neighborhoods all the time and talking with folks as well. And I did read, I mean, we had 270 comments on the log. We had all of these different attachments. There was a huge volume. And actually, for my part, given how much and how early the opposition was to this trail, I was surprised at how balanced these comments were. In the log, I mean, I marked everyone that was opposed or support. And so from my perspective, I absolutely, I think I trust you on doing your homework and everything like that. We all do that. But I've read the documents, I've talked to a lot of folks, and I see a very balanced and makes it a harder choice for us because they're really, I don't see the scales tipping in one direction or the other. So that's the first part from my reflection is this is an incredibly challenging corridor. It is a urban road, lots of curb cuts, and we know this from Leon and Tallahassee. We don't build roads like this anymore. We are going back and retrofitting roads that didn't have good sidewalks and we didn't maintain the sidewalks. But when we go and build Blairstone or Capitol Circle or something else, it's got a wide multi-use path. We just did this on Magnolia, something we fought for a long time. I have not driven down that road, Commissioner Williams-Cox. I know you do daily, and I head over there from my mom's house often. I would be surprised if in that short stretch of Magnolia there wasn't close to 44 cuts. I mean, with all of the different driveways and apartments and everything else. So these are challenges we have faced in other areas, and they are challenges we will face anytime we do a multi-use trail on an older road like this, because we have not built to accommodate bike and ped. And for me, that really is the crux of this. We already have safety issues, bottom line. We absolutely do. You showed pictures of the sidewalks. Mary Kay, your comment has been standing out to me that bike lanes are like cell phone correction lanes. Boy, you said that to me last week, and I just got to quote you on that. And when Mr. Van Oss stood up and said they don't take the kids in the bike lanes, that is what terrifies me, are people crossing over into the bike lanes. Things have changed. And the folks, the residents in the area absolutely have made good points. You truly have. I mean, if this happened, this would be a big change. It would be a change on any road like Magnolia, like Franklin, like others. There is an education piece of this. There is that muscle memory. I think Mr. Williams had mentioned that stuck out to me, that we do have that muscle memory, and we got to start adjusting that. So I think this is not a perfect fit, but it's something, from my perspective, if we're going to focus on safety and the goals that we have set forward for years in this community, we've done the feasibility study and we should move to design phase, because that doesn't commit us to constructing it, but it allows us to work through the details and the issues that a lot of people have really been asking about. There's been concerns for months that we don't have answers to a lot of these questions. We don't get them until design phase. Commissioner Williams-Cox, I just appreciate how you framed that, the feasibility versus the design. I think that was really good, really succinct. And I have to admit, I wish you or Commissioner Richardson had made a substitute motion. But since we don't have one on the table, I'll get to you in a second, Commissioner V, or Dr. V, Commissioner via BCA. We go back and forth. I'm going to say this, if there was a majority in favor of your motion, Commissioner Minor. I have a lot of concern about making decisions in the middle of the meeting about alternative routes, about looking at other projects. And Brian, I appreciate what you said about moving money to different places or keeping the community. Quite bluntly, that's not what the history has been, but that might be more on road projects than, you know, if we decide not to move forward with the road project, money's gone. It's out in the district someplace else. So if possible, I would hope that we could keep the feasibility, not vote that down tonight. Keep that alive until the next meeting, if that is the will of the board, of the majority, and bring back information on Commissioner Minor's alternative on the priorities list, and look at these three aspects as a whole, so all of us are on the same page before we make a decision that might put the feasibility study on the shelf for a project, as you said, Commissioner Williams-Cox, that's going to remain on the list for a while. We need to decide whether or not we're ever coming back to Thomasville Road if we don't move forward with the feasibility study. So that would be my friendly suggestion, is just to keep the feasibility study alive until the next meeting so we can see all of this information. But if there was a substitute motion on the table to approve the feasibility study, I would support that so that we can dig into the details and see how this works. I've got two commissioners up. Do you need to jump in here?
Just a
Okay.
suggestion.
Gentlemen, just one quick.
We actually, and this is on the assumption that you decide to table this and move it to the next meeting.
I can't understand.
Oh, sorry. This thing off. If you were to decide to table this and move it to another meeting, I would suggest, because we had a lot of logistical problems tonight with this, you know, we were concerned about lack of parking during session. I believe session ends in early March, if I'm not mistaken, so I would suggest that we move.
Maybe.
If you were to, maybe, true. I guess my point is I would suggest that we move this to a meeting. We can do it at our regular scheduled time, so that would probably be at least March, perhaps April, if the session goes on longer. That way, yeah, it's at our normal time, and again, there was a lot of logistical issues getting this set up for tonight.
Thank you, Greg. Dr. B, and then Commissioner Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This project happened to be in the area that I do not directly represent. I lived in Tallahassee for years. All of my children and my grandchildren are here in Tallahassee. On this particular project, I have heard via emails and telephone from both sides of the argument presented today, those who are in favor and those who are in opposition. I recall the same arguments were presented both in favor and against cell phone towers, and antenna because of their electromagnetic radiation that may be hazardous to our health. We have come this far. Honestly, looking at this document that Commissioner Minor has just given to us today, oh, he really invested a lot of quality time to have come up with this. And as someone whose vote is going to count on the direction we go, I would suggest, and I hope that's the direction we're going, to table this and work with this plan that Commissioner Minor has presented so that we do what is right by the citizens. I honestly pray and hope that in the design phase, if we go forward, incorporate Commissioner Minor's concerns, that the architect and the engineer seriously consider the public safety concern in their design. So all I'm going to say, Madam Chair and fellow commissioners, is that nothing will change if nothing changes. And that the politics, that politics is the art of the possible, not the perfect. because the only politics that matter is the politics that gets us to a better place. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Richardson.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to move a substitute motion that we move forward with the staff recommendation and move this item to the design phase.
Second.
Not legal to do that.
Legal?
Okay.
We don't have a substitute motion on the table, so.
So what are we going to vote on?
We have to vote on the substitute motion first, and if that fails, then we go back to the original motion. Yes. And we had a second from Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Move the design forward.
No, sir.
I'm sorry, everyone. This is typical for any of our board meetings. It's Robert's rules. If a substitute motion is introduced, that is voted on first. But the original motion is still on the table. Okay.
Madam Chair, if the attorney, who I believe is the parliamentarian for this particular meeting, in order to satisfy the grumbling I'm hearing, Mr. Attorney, Counsel, could you please give us your parliamentary advice as to what the procedure should be? Thank you, sir.
Good suggestion, Dr. D.
What the chair stated is correct.
Thank you. Attorney Williams, I appreciate that. Okay. Forgive me for the folks in the audience. This is a very serious issue. We have been deep into Robert's rules for a long time, so I'm glad I got it right. That's all I can say. I should have let counsel answer that question. Okay, so we have a substitute motion, and again, that is for moving the feasibility study forward to design phase, which does not guarantee construction, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And in fact, you said we didn't have construction dollars already in the 5-year.
We do not.
Okay. Now that that motion's on the table, one last comment from me, which I would have made if we were talking more about the feasibility study. There are some concerning areas, and I really appreciate Kimberly Horn, Katie, you all's suggestion and that list of design requirements that would be forwarded to FDOT that included a meandering or non-uniform trail. To me, there's no point in having a set width if it takes out large trees or other things like that. To be able to meander could avoid some of the issues and improve the safety. But again, that process, and Greg, check me on this, as we went through design, there will be another round of public engagements and meetings at CRTPA, or it'll come back to the board?
Typically, in this case, on the Thomasville Road portion, DOT would take over the design. They would do public meetings as part of that design phase. Usually, we will have them come back and give updates to you all, usually at least twice at what we call 60% plans and then at final plans or somewhere in that neighborhood. But typically, they would come back to you all twice with presentations.
Okay, so just, Brent, did you want to add anything? I wanted everyone to understand that there is public participation or what the next steps, regardless of which direction we move.
Yes, the department understands the importance of this project, and the CRTPA did set the bar very high for our public outreach. So the department would mimic that as best we can within the parameters we have. But yes, I would anticipate us coming back a minimum of twice to provide updates and opportunity for this board to make comment.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Williams-Cox and then Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was a point that I was going to make, that this is not a done deal.
Right.
This, that you go from, my background is IT, so we gather the requirements through public engagement and other factors, and then we move to design. But you're constantly taking in consideration other factors. You don't just go behind a closed door and come out with something. So I fully expect that there will continue to be public engagement. There are some very very important facts and factors that came out tonight that we know we have to be considered in going into design. So I look forward to citizens continuing to remain engaged. And since Dr. V is our philosopher for tonight, I'm going to add one form. When the pain of change is greater than change, then you change. So it is time for us to embrace change, because that and death and taxes are the only things that, you can count on. So at least we're trying to manage this change, and it didn't just happen upon us. We're trying to manage it to be equitable. Since we're talking about equity, let's be equitable in how we do this. So I just wanted to add that, and I do fully expect that there'll continue to be public engagement, even in the design phase. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Matlow?
I didn't bring any inspirational quotes today. I apologize.
Get with me.
Just one question and follow up. Mr. Slay, has there been any discussion about reducing to 35 miles per hour on Thomasville Road?
I do know there is some history on that well before my time. The reality of it is, I think, and I noticed Brian's putting his placard up. The reality of that is we would need to look at a probably complete redesign of the roadway. First and foremost, you can't just go out and arbitrarily raise the speed limit. That's governed by statutes for the most part. That is something we could definitely look at, but it's going to play back into priorities. I think to get it, let's say a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit would require extensive modification of the roadway. In looking at the cost of that compared to other priorities, ultimately that would be something you all would decide. But we've got over $1 billion list of priorities on our list already, not including something like that. But the shorter answer is there's not an easy fix to that. We could certainly ask the department to take a look at it, but they're going to come back and tell you that they just can't, again, they can't arbitrarily just lower the speed limit if that's kind of the question you're asking.
Brian, please.
I agree with what Greg just stated. However, I do want to add on the opportunity to look at the speed, look at traffic calming would be a component the department would look at in a multi-use path design. We could not go in and retrofit the roadway. That would be, in essence, a capacity type project. That would be a substantial cost, but the department would utilize our complete streets options that we have available to us to see if there was any opportunities to encourage a lower speed. As Greg stated, we can't arbitrarily reduce the speed. It's based on the engineering of the roadway. But again, in the multi-use path design, we could take a look at any opportunities we could to encourage a reduction in speed.
No, just for follow-up, that was the answer I expected, frankly, but I think if we're being truly forward-thinking on what this corridor looks like, that's the commitment we would have to take. That's the leap we would have to take. I understand capacity issues, but when we're looking forward at autonomous vehicles and we're looking forward at transit, the idea is to get people out of the car to address those capacity issues. So I feel like this is largely an expensive thing that doesn't really get us to where we're going, and so I can't support it today. I can support the compromise Brigg-Minor offered. Thank you.
Commissioner.
I just want to make clarification. Commissioner Meyer, in your motion with the plan that you brought back, we weren't approving it today. You wanted to be evaluated and brought back to us for our approval then, correct?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Maddox, yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, we would need to have that agenda item come back to us as an agenda item with this proposal and have CRTPA take a look at it. Figure out where that, it would come from the same pot of money as what we talked about, but that would need to come back to us, I think, for approval.
Yeah, I just wanted to make that clarification. I'm not much of creating policy on the fly either, Commissioner Richardson. I do understand that. Most times it does lead absolutely to disaster. I just want to make sure that if I voted in favor of Commissioner Minor's motion, I wasn't voting to approve that plan right now. I do think. But how many times do we all come to the table with different ideas for staff to evaluate, especially when it comes to stuff like this? I think this is the right way to go about it. If he has an idea, he has an idea. We bring it back in the reference and the framework of everything else that we've asked to come back. And so with that, I mean, I'll still support that agenda item coming back. Do understand the commissioners that are ready to move this thing along. And I hope either way, whether we go with the feasibility study moving this thing forward or the agenda item, that we do during the next phases really have conversations around, if we go to the design, how we can make this work for everyone. I know that's the goal for everybody here, is to make this work for everyone. So either way it goes, again, my vote against moving towards feasibility is because I live in the area and can identify with trying to make that left turn off Peacefield or even a right, and see those cars running up and down the road. And even it's to a point that my wife is afraid for me to run on Thomasville Road, because she was like, somebody could jump the curve and hit you. And I'm like, I'm totally fine. Yeah, she got plenty of insurance. That's why I told her I'm totally fine. That everything will be taken care of in the event that I do get hit. But I look forward to the vote. And either way, I know that people will come out of this satisfied. So I appreciate the spirit of the board trying to make sure that we have conversations around meeting in the middle. Thank you, Madam Chair. I look forward to the vote.
Thank you, Commissioner Maddox. Okay, so I could have a little fun here, although it's not a fun subject, and say you need a multi.
And I have an hour drive.
Protect yourself from those cars.
I could take this wider sidewalk.
About City of Tallahassee.
You left yourself wide open there, sir. Okay. So, I'm sorry. Did you have another question?
No, I was just had a comment, but I'm done with that now.
Okay,
I'm listening.
ma'am. If you'd like to make a comment?
Nope.
And let me pause here and say, our staff has been shocked since the beginning that there was so much interest. We've talked to a lot of folks. I mean, we all know we don't normally get this much attention at the beginning of a feasibility study. Maybe at the end, maybe going into design, but this was pretty big. So this is quite a first meeting for you, Commissioner Quincer.
Quincer, I'll go by that.
I was going to mash it all up there, Mr. Smith. Thank you for being here. It was a good introduction. So bringing me back here, we've got close to 300,000 in this feasibility study already. And Commissioner Minor, just before we go to a vote on the substitute motion and then the motion, I'm going to make one more stab at bringing back that feasibility study with the agenda item, just to have all options on the table. I am not convinced that the bike route on Capitol Circle is going to be any more safe or anything else. I haven't gotten to study or map, things like that. So in an effort to go where our philosopher is going here, just working with all of this information at one time could be really helpful to think about those options and to get creative. And I would hate for us to move so quickly and ditch $300,000 study and need to reflect on parts of it once we see options for the sidewalk or something else like that. I'm kind of surprised by the cost. It is, and you did use the increase there, but 6 million-ish, it's not a huge amount for this trail, but that would kind of help get more clarity over what DOT funds are going to be available and for what parts. I'm just going to put that out there. Commissioner Richardson.
I'm calling a question, Madam Chair.
I was about to move for a vote, sir, so
Okay.
can you withdraw that so we don't have to take a
Okay.
vote on
I'll
that?
withdraw it if we can get to a vote.
Thank you, sir. All right, we've got a substitute motion on the floor for option 1, which is approving the feasibility study, and we're going to do a roll call vote just to make it easy. And for the audience, this is because we have weighted voting and they'll need to do some math. So,
Quick question.
yes, ma'am.
We're taking the substitute motion first? Or
Yes,
the
ma'am.
original motion? Okay.
Got to take the substitute first.
All right. Commissioner Dozier?
Aye.
Commissioner Maddox?
No.
Okay. Commissioner Minor?
No.
Commissioner Matlow?
No.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams-Cox?
Yes.
Commissioner Barfield?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yay?
Commissioner Messerschmidt
Yes.
and Commissioner Diabisi.
Yes.
Did we put,
Miss Commissioner.
put it, I'm sorry?
Did you miss Commissioner Fielder?
You got Commissioner.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep. Got everybody?
Did I miss somebody?
We're good.
So from the voting substitute motion, for the motion was 62.63%, and against it was 37.37. So the motion passes.
All right. Thank you. I understand, I mean, so I can have Counsel Williams, Attorney Williams clarify this if we need to, but because the substitute motion passes, we do not go back and take a vote on the original motion, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Nelson,
Madam
Point
Chair.
of order, point of order,
okay.
point of order.
I'm not used to the gavel, I'm sorry. I would love for you, let's have a conversation after the meeting. Attorney Williams, will you just clarify the substitute since we do have concerns about this?
You had a motion on the floor, and then a substitute motion was presented, and a second was done. Based on that, the substitute motion was the motion that was to be heard first, and upon it being voted, if it was voted down, then you would go back to the original motion and hear the original motion. If the substitute motion was passed, as it's stated, it's a substitute motion, so therefore it took the place of the original motion. So upon passage, you don't go back to the original motion.
Thank you, sir. And part of that is because we have more than 60% in favor of the substitute motion, so more than likely.
The percentage is just because we have a weighted vote here in CRTPA, but it's a pass-fail vote.
Right.
And the percentage was sufficient to pass.
Thank you. Okay, I understand that Robert's rules, we have to wade through them, and that's why we have counsel at the table. So I know we'll be available for any questions. Again, the feasibility is just one step in the process moving forward to design. So any other comments on this? I don't think so. Mr. Slay.
Next up is our FDOT report, and I just wanted to thank Bryant. You all may not know, actually, Brian lives in Milton, so he had a long drive over, and he's got a long drive back. So I just want to appreciate Brian for being here tonight. Thank Brian.
The department doesn't have an update for this meeting.
For everybody in the audience, we still have a couple items of business before we get out of here. Brian, thank you for driving over. You have the floor, sir.
No update.
No updates, okay, thank you. I couldn't hear very well there. Executive Director's report. Any
Just
items?
one thing quickly, we're still kind of deciphering through the Fed bill. We actually received some information late last week from Federal Highway on some breakdowns. I have not had a chance to look at that yet. Our next meeting is actually 2 weeks from tomorrow. We're back on our regular schedule, so I'm hoping to have some updates on some of those programs by then, and I think Brian may hopefully have some updates as well.
Okay. I know it's still a little noisy. Everybody got that? We've got it.
That's right.
That's why I asked Commissioner Williams-Cox. Okay, so we should have an update on the federal infrastructure bill. You're still working through that, but we hope
Yes,
to have
ma'am.
something at our next meeting, which, just as a reminder, is in 2 weeks because we pushed this meeting back to the 5:30 start. Did I capture that? Greg?
That's it. That
Okay.
works. Madam
Anything
Chair.
else?
I just wanted to mention to Commissioner Messerschmidt that she could blame Commissioner Merritt for bailing out and coming here tonight. So, welcome to the CRTPA.
Blame is probably a very light word for what I'm going to do with Commissioner Mayor. However, I did, Madam, may I?
Of course, please.
I know everybody's ready to go home. We have kind of ish, Betsy, yourself and I, yours is a little longer than ours. But I did want to say that just the intrigue with regard to coming from a rural area and 35,000 people being up and down Thomasville Road on any given time is just amazing, because that's the population of my county. So this has been very interesting.
Well, just to be clear, and I hope my colleagues from other counties will back me up, we do get into a lot of rural issues a lot of times.
Of course.
And the connection here is really important between our 4 counties.
Absolutely.
And we stick together.
Yes, forgive me one.
Good thing you packed your lunch.
We never. Okay. Okay. No other comments, and I'm glad no one walked out of the room here. So, Attorney Williams, would you please explain what you just?
Right.
Okay.
Because we had some opposition, I would really quickly looked at the Roberts Rules of Order online, and when I read the Roberts Rules, it does state, and this is a quirk, that after you have the substitute motion and it's adopted, you then take the substitute motion, it becomes the main motion. So then you have to vote a second time on the substitute motion, which is now the main motion. So you have to have 2 votes. So that statement was correct, and even though I gave you incorrect directions originally, I have to tell you what Robert's Rules says. So you have to have a second vote on the main motion, because now you substituted a motion for the main motion, so you vote on it the second time.
Okay, so just to be clear here, we do not vote on the original motion, Commissioner Minor's motion, because the substitute motion takes the place of that. But we do need a second vote on Commissioner Richardson's motion, and we need to make that motion.
You need to make that motion.
Okay.
Because the first motion was just to substitute. It was not on the passage of that issue.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, for city, county, for everybody, this is not exactly how we normally take
What version of Robert's Rule is there?
It
doesn't seem to be fishing.
Madam Chair, I would like to move that we adopt staff recommendation to move the feasibility study to the design phase.
Second.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Any other comments, third time around? All right. Roll call vote. Should we do it? Yes. We will do that one more time. Thank you, Yolanda.
Commissioner Dozier,
Aye.
Commissioner Maddow,
No.
Commissioner Minor,
No.
Commissioner Matlow, Commissioner Richardson,
Yes.
Commissioner Williams Cox,
Yes.
Commissioner Barfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Messersmith,
Aye.
and Commissioner Villalobos.
Yeah.
Same count as last, correct?
Same as last.
Same vote,
Okay.
same score.
All right. If things had changed in that few minutes, I would have been surprised. Okay, again, thank you, Attorney Williams, for doing that. Nothing else, gentlemen? Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir. Forgive me, Commissioner Richardson, I thought you had that up for the...
Yeah, no, I'm going to bring this up again. I'm just going to express, Greg, how just disappointed I am that it's been, 3-4 meetings now that I've asked for information to come back on the crosswalk on Orange Avenue at Nims Middle School. And I feel now like I've been ignored, and I'm pissed off that I've been ignored. I've been patient. I've asked several times now, and I've gotten no feedback. And so I'm going to insist that by the next meeting, I have feedback on that project.
Yes,
Well, we checked in today, Commissioner, and the safety office was looking at funding. So what we have to do is follow up with them and tell them, you all actually approved funding about 1.5 years ago for that project. So that's something we found out today, and hopefully can get you an answer by the next meeting. But you all
Well,
approved
it's
funding
not
for
for
the
Curtis
NIMS project.
Richardson. It's for the CRTPA.
I understand.
And the children and families who have to cross that very busy thoroughfare every day. Greg, that's who it's for.
Yes, sir.
All right.
I just expect to have an answer, a definitive answer by the time we meet the next time.
All right. Sounds like we're working through. Thank you, Commissioner Richardson. Commissioner Minor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had a very difficult vote on a very difficult issue, and I appreciate the discussion. You know, you had people that were on very different sides that have spent a lot of time working on this. So if we can all just respect both sides, both opinions, they were very on opposite ends, but a lot of people really cared about this issue very much. So please respect both sides on that. And just want to say to Commissioner Maddox, yes, I am a walker. For the record, 13,000 steps a day on Fitbit. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments, questions? All right.
Motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned.
Yay.